Chapter 426. The principal leaves. I'm curious how much the Ministry of Magic has paid to let the directors sign me to remove me, or what other means did you use? Dumbledore unfolded the parchment with a letter written on it. No, it's just everyone's voice. Fudge shrank from the angry Dumbledore, but soon he straightened his back and retorted. After Dolores came to this school, we finally knew the hidden problem of this school. Dumbledore, you have controlled Hogwarts for so long that you have regarded it as your private site. But the Ministry of Magic believes that Hogwarts still belongs to the school managers anyway. You are just the manager here. Oh, that's a great talk, Minister, you're right. The young acne wizard who followed Fudge said excitedly, as if the acne on his face was about to explode. At the same time, he didn't stop. Holding a pen to quickly record something on the parchment. Everyone's cry? It seems that I guessed right. Something really happened, so that some people couldn't wait to let me leave here to clear obstacles for their masters. Dumbledore's elbows were resting on the table. The upper 10 fingers said crossly, eyes shining with wisdom. I don't know what you're saying. I think that your age is too old and you have lost your wisdom. You have even started to cover up your problems with speechless words. I think this is why Hogwarts has continued for several years. The reason for the unexpected situation for many years. So I think you should leave this position now and give this position to the more capable people. Fudge said with a head. If the board wants me to go, Connolly, of course I will give up my seat. But Professor McGonagall stuttered. No, Harry growled. Now when you leave this situation, Hogwarts is no longer safe. Nonsense. Umbridge jumped out again. This school is so unsafe because of Dumbledore's previous wrong practices. I believe that under the control of the Ministry of Magic, Hogwarts will truly become the safest place in the UK. Enough. Dumbledore's bright blue eyes kept staring at Fudge's brown eyes mixed with excitement, fear and timidity. I will respect all legal regulations, but I hope you understand the dangers facing the magical world right now. Don't let your vision be as small as your feet. After he finished, he looked at Harry and Professor McGonagall. Even if I left this school, I would still pay attention to it. You will also find that in Hogwarts, those who ask for help can always get help. Please note that you are now the former principal. Umbridge interjected, extremely outdated at this time. Someone may miss your very personal approach to dealing with problems before, but I believe that under the leadership of the Ministry of Magic, your successor will probably do better. Okay. Dumbledore looked at Harry again. Some exercises I want you to persevere, even if you don't like these exercises anymore. It's like even if children don't like cauliflower, parents must let him eat them. Things are necessary. After finishing his final instructions, Dumbledore raised his hand and firmly grasped Phoenix's long golden tail. With a flame, the two of them disappeared. Only the last sentence came from the fire. I will not run away and hide, Foggy. I dare to assure you that you will soon feel that if I were not driven from Hogwarts. All right. Fuji's face became unprecedentedly unsightly. Who does he think he is? A former principal of Hogwarts? Why did he tell me this? He is Dumbledore, now the world's greatest white wizard, which is enough. Professor McGonagall said sharply. Several portraits of the principal booed Fudge, and even made one or two rude gestures. Malwa, Fudge said fiercely, but I only know that your friends should be finished this time. After he finished looking at Professor McGonagall, he nodded to Harry and Marietta dismissively. You better take them back to bed. Today is a terrible but hopeful day. Professor McGonagall shook his head and said nothing, and led Harry and Marietta to the door. When the door closed, Harry knew that Hogwarts might be very different from today. As Dumbledore left, Lane immediately knew that the situation had changed. Because the system in his mind reminded him that Dumbledore had deviated from his departure, he got a 7-point offset this time. Deviation. How much deviation will there be? Ryan thought, but fortunately it didn't take a few minutes for Harry to crawl in from the entrance. Ginny, who had been holding her hands tightly beside her, immediately rushed out to meet Harry. Ron was one step late, and could only watch the sister holding Harry's arms in both hands. How is it going? After discovering that only 5 of them were left in the common room, Ryan first asked everyone's inner doubts. Dumbledore left. Harry buried his face in his hands as soon as he sat down, and a few minutes after Ryan asked the question, a hoarse voice came from Harry's fingers. After waiting for Ryan to continue to inquire, Harry briefly said everything he encountered in the office. I'm so lucky, Ginny said with emotion after listening to Harry's story. If today's luck is a little worse, Principal Dumbledore will not simply be forced to resign. Maybe the Foggy guys can give the principal Mr. Luozi a lot of charges. This is indeed the case. Harry nodded. I heard what Fudge said. They seem to try to accuse Professor Dumbledore of trying to conspire to organize an army to overthrow the Ministry of Magic. It's because of the name Dumbledore's army? Ron was still confused on the side, and Ginny guessed the reason. That's it. I thought things too simple at the time. It was all my fault, Harry said by pulling his hair. Ron hurried forward to comfort his friend when he saw it. It's not to blame you, Lane comforted. After all, we are too far away from the last war, and lack of vigilance is normal. Remember the lesson www.mtlnovel.com. Just don't commit it next time. There has never been a person who does not make mistakes. Fortunately, the situation is not too bad this time, and you still have the opportunity to correct it. By the way, this thing is returned to you, Lane said, pulling out the list and putting it on the table. Ginny exclaimed in a low voice when she saw it. Did you collect this list at the time? Harry and Ron also looked at the parchment on the table, and then showed the same shocked look. Yes. Ryan knew that this was not a good time to leave a name. After coming out of the library, Hermione and I were going to take out something stored in the request room. As a result, we saw 2 Slytherin students sneaking in there. So the 2 of us. Ryan took a moment to explain what he had done with Hermione before. The only thing omitted was Hermione's easy-to-dress part. In this situation, even if our legal group would burn all the notes and other things after the meeting, I might be caught by Umbridge. You obviously belong to an illegal organization but put the list there. Ryan didn't quite understand Harry's approach. He always felt that in the original text, Harry had prepared a underground resistance organization but got holes everywhere. Even those in the anti-Japanese drama could not be more horizontal. Too low. You don't need to tell me how failed. Harry looked very frustrated. I think most people's lives may be tough in the future. Said that Harry put the list into the fireplace, and everyone didn't go to sleep until they watched the flame completely turn the list into a ball of coke. Chapter 427, Variety. The Ministry of Magic Linksai was replaced by Dolores Jan Umbridge, Senior Investigator. Dumbledore became the principal of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. The above regulations are in line with 28th Education Order. This notice was posted all over the school overnight. The people in the castle heard that Fudge and Umbridge tried every means to use various tricks to try to frame Dumbledore to no avail. Finally, they could only lure the school directors to make Dumbledore left. The campus was filled with an atmosphere of terror, and everyone felt that when there were a large number of Death Eaters fleeing Azkaban, Dumbledore's departure left the entire castle in a very dangerous state. For more than half a century before, Hogwarts was called the safest place in the UK not because of the ancient magic of the powerful castle, but because Dumbledore, known as the first person in the wizarding world, was the principal here. Now that the principal had left, everyone had to admit that the castle seemed less secure than it used to be. But Umbridge didn't pay attention to it. She was already fascinated by the fact that she became the principal of Hogwarts. Even if the principal's office was automatically closed, Umbridge, who could not pass the stone monster, just fired afterwards. He shamelessly nailed the sign of the principal's office at the entrance of his office, and then began to point fingers at the school. For example, Umbridge formed an investigation action team and recruited many pro-magic students as members of the action team. These members mainly come from various pureblood family members of Slytherin. Unfortunately, due to the previous big revelation about Umbridge's life led by Ryan, these selected members didn't quite think of a mixed race witch from a humble family. So the investigative action team spends most of their time doing what they want to do, and cannot monitor everything for her school as Umbridge imagined. Right, you asked what your sister did before. Hermione asked curiously in the library that day. I heard that Rose Crystal had a wooden box in the space bag yesterday and went out for a few hours. When I came back, I brought another big wooden box. Rose Crystal ran to your dormitory again to have a meeting with you? Ryan knew how Hermione knew about it at once. It was the contact items I sent to Sirius and my shop. The old woman is supported by the Ministry of Magic behind her, and the communication channels inside and outside the school are under her supervision. The Ministry of Magic has a flyway network administrator who will always monitor every furnace in Hogwarts except Umbridge's office. Fire. At the same time, the investigative action team as her running dog will dismantle all owl males entering and leaving the castle, and Filch monitors all secret passages inside and outside the castle. In this case, we must have a secure communication channel to communicate with the outside, especially when I am doing business and have some content that is a trade secret to contact the outside. Once seen by the unethical old woman in Umbridge, these guys know if she will sell it directly to my competitors, Ryan said, looking at no one around, and leaning into Hermione's ear. That old woman. Hermione took a deep breath. She's a principal is to turn the school into a prison. What's the matter? Ryan asked, pointing behind Hermione. A Ravenclaw girl held a book on the edge of a table, and everyone else at the table left, leaving Janku sitting there. That girl is Marietta, who actively betrayed Harry and their people, Hermione said in a disdainful tone. Now everyone is reluctant to sit with her or talk to her. Only you fellows. Krujang is a really good person and is willing to approach her. Is equivalent to social death, which is simply too bad. Sure enough, no matter which world informer is unwelcome. However, this is also Marietta's self-acceptance. If you are tortured or infused with some potion, you can understand these things, but this act of active whistleblowing is really unbearable. I must admit that Marietta did something very wrong, but as a friend, I can't leave her there. Janku explained to those who questioned her closeness to Marietta at a book club event on Saturday. Everyone at the book club accepted this explanation. Compared with those who abandon their friends in a bad situation, people like Janku are closer and more willing to be close. And everyone also knows that she is different from her friends, not the kind of people who will betray. Okay, we can continue to practice. After confirming that the investigative action team member who just came to check left, Ryan greeted everyone to continue the practice. So everyone immediately ran to the corner of the classroom against the corner, and then watched Ryan waving his wand in the air to let those tables and chairs fly into the air, and then slowly transformed into various obstacles distributed throughout the classroom. This is the experience that Ryan learned in the 2nd grade at the Castro Blue Master College, using a lot of obstacles to arrange a classroom in the classroom close to the actual combat field, and then practice in it. For Ryan, who is now a high-level alchemist, it is very easy to transform quickly or set some traps. God, why is this so difficult? Even the final exam that Professor Lupin made that year was not as complicated as that. Justin said, rubbing his arms. He was hit by a blast trap less than 3 minutes before entering the field. Came out. It is said that in the past, many pureblood families would have similar trial grounds for practicing magic and fighting. Hannah explained quietly. However, the family that still maintains such facilities today is estimated to no longer exist. Yes, my grandmother told me about it before. Neville nodded. But the cost of such facilities is not low. Our family's training ground is only those obstacles. This alchemy trap can't afford it at all. We have never heard of such a thing, Weasley said in unison. Then Fred shrugged. It is estimated that the ancestor of my family sold that thing a long time ago, but I think we should be able to rebuild this. George nodded and said to Ryan, hey, we will definitely ask you to order products when we rebuild the family training ground. Remember to give us a discount. It certainly will. Also, it's your turn to go in now. www.mplnovel.com. Don't be pushed out in less than 5 minutes this time. Ryan interrupted the twins' chat and went downstairs. As they did, Ryan worried that at the end, he would not be able to achieve the goal of everyone entering the field 3 times. Hermione, you don't talk about your boyfriend. Why did those traps become so powerful after we entered? The stinging curse last time made me feel that my right half pulled and the left half became the same again, said Fred. That's because you're not serious. Or you can hide from that trap. Imho, it's not a good thing for you to practice as a game-like thing. The real battlefield is full of blood and death. You have to put it in practice. Those life-saving skills can only be practiced when they are so proficient that they can do it subconsciously when they are in danger. Otherwise, you may not be able to save your life after a crisis. You're right. Fred was no longer the hippie smile. He nodded seriously. Last time our father specifically told us that he was seriously undertrained in peacetime, leading to his complete lack of actual combat so that he would fall asleep while on duty. If it weren't for Ryan's bracelet we might not see him. So he told we must be serious when we are in actual combat. We have indeed slacked off before. George nodded and agreed. We must be seriously training today. Look at it. We will insist on enough time. After he and Fred sternly rushed into the obstacle. I hope the training will make them stronger, so some tragedies may not happen. Lane thought of the sound of battle coming from the obstacle. Chapter 428. New plan. I really hope that the next party will come sooner. Umbridge's black magic defense class is a waste of time, Hannah said at the end of the party. If I only take her class, this year's OWL's exam of my black magic defense technique class will definitely be smashed. If this reading club can help make up the class, maybe I will get a T. The reading club this semester is more and more like a fighting club, because Umbridge basically abandoned the course of black magic defense. Everyone is now gathering together to supplement this knowledge. The book club was set up to help each other. Ryan said to several people who came over, I think our exams will definitely achieve satisfactory results. After sending everyone away, Ryan and Hermione were packing up the venue. Suddenly the twins sneaked in from the door and greeted them. Ryan, we want to discuss something with you. What's the matter? Ryan mumbled the obstacles and turned back to the table and chairs. After explaining to Hermione, he walked into the corridor and asked, let's say, what are you two calling me to do at this time? And you must specifically avoid Hermione. It's like this. Fred shrugged. I think we are completely adults and don't need to continue to receive full-time education. We originally planned to pass the NEWT exam and get the certificate according to my mother's wishes, but now we can't stand the repressed atmosphere now. George blinked. Especially we have opened a shop in Diagon Alley, which just allows us to show our talents. So Fred followed George's words. As the largest shareholder of our store, we feel that we should consult your opinion on this matter. Besides that, Percy has told us several times before that you have guided his life many times and made him make the right choices in key places. Although we haven't always got along well with Percy, but we must also admit that in some ways he is indeed the best person in the family. George spread his hand. So now that we have encountered the same problem, we also want to ask you to ask about our life. If you really need me to say something, I can only say that your idea is really lacking in consideration. Lane carefully selected words and said, be aware that if you do this, your studies will be terminated. We know, Fred said first. No, you don't know, Lane said, shaking his hand. You may think this is cool and it can reflect your spirit of resistance. You must know that the professors in the school are not the only ones in Umbridge. Have you considered the ideas of other professors in this way? Not to mention your mother supporting you to open a store, you should also fulfill one of your mother's hopes for you. Otherwise, I will go to the burrow without a face. But the current atmosphere, George said a little depressed. We just want to change the school. Your naive approach can only change yourself. Ryan revealed the truth mercilessly. I believe this castle will change, but it will never be your behavior. So you should take the NEWT exam and get a certificate, and then be the store manager. Speaking of which, Ryan raised his arms and put them on the shoulders of the two. I know the school atmosphere is bad now, but bear with me for a moment. You have to leave at the end of this year, and I have to stay here for several years. I believe things will change in a good direction soon. What are you still worried about? Of course. Seeing the twins frustratedly agree with her point of view, Ryan decided to say something exciting. After the exam, you can do a big one. Just make sure you don't get yourself into Azkaban. After watching the twins leave, Hermione pushed open the door and came out. Finally packed. What did you just talk about? Wouldn't it be a prank plan? Hermione, you should believe that I am not the kind of troublemaker. Lane looked at Hermione's expression you continued to make and couldn't help laughing. Okay, at least Umbridge is not worth doing something for me. I did just dissuade the twins. I believe you, Hermione said a few seconds after staring at Ryan's eyes. By the way, I think the book club is doing well now and should be able to take the next step. What do you think we should do next? We can compile a magazine. Lane thought about this problem before. I find that one of the biggest problems for wizards now is that they don't understand the Mull world at all. Even Mr. Weasley, who claims to be the most favorite Mull, can't tell the difference between Mull currencies, or some common Mull's knowledge. In this case, the first step we should do is literacy. At least let the wizards know what the Mull is like. You are right. The first step should indeed be understanding. Hermione nodded. So how to let them know? Take out the physical exhibition by making the exhibition board or take the time to tell them. These are some routines, and the effect is very poor. Lane told Hermione the fact. According to the news I heard, this is how the Mull research class in our school is. Then we trained a group of wizards who were required to wear a diving suit and walk with oxygen cylinders to the campsite while wearing Mull costumes. Hermione smiled with her mouth covered, and she remembered the strange wizards wearing the Quidditch World Cup last year. Asked after she smiled. So what do you think we should do? I think we can start a magazine first. Ryan said seriously. This is the experience in the book he had read before. If you want others to accept your point of view, the first thing is to let your point of view be known to others. This is inseparable from publicity. In view of the few propaganda methods in the wizarding world, Ryan naturally thought of magazines. Magazine? Similar to Transfiguration research? Hermione asked curiously. It seems that Gwibber is studying even at www.mtlnovel.com. Oh, of course not. That's too formal. Ryan shook his head. We are popularizing science, and this highly professional academic magazine is not conducive to publicity. In my conception, this book will have very professional academic content, but only a small part. Most of them are humorous paragraphs or comics. For example, the guy in the Quidditch World Cup wearing a diving suit carrying an oxygen cylinder is easy to use as a content of the comic to highlight how the wizards misunderstand Mulls. It sounds good. Hermione nodded. As long as the content of the narrative is professional and accurate, the method of expressing these things is not the point. After all, this is just an undergraduate general book instead of a textbook. Of course, I think that there should be many people who buy this magazine, because people like to watch something interesting. There are too few entertainment items for wizards. Yes. In addition, we can sell books and return a sum of money, so that this magazine can stick to it. Lane added. It's easy to know that magazines written entirely with hobbies like singing the opposition are easily discarded because of the change in the person who edited the book. But our book is for publicity. It must have an independent source of income to enable it long-term support. Only in this way can our magazine reach its final goal and have enough influence to let all wizards understand the truth of Mulls. What you said makes sense. We will first compile the sample publication and publish it in the book club. If the results are good, we will proceed to the next step. Hermione said when the two were approaching the common room. I hope everything goes well. Chapter 429, Conflict. In the next time, Ryan and Hermione told everyone about the plan. Everyone is very interested in this matter, and has provided a lot of help in the creation of the sample magazine. For example, Luna volunteered to take the work of drawing 4-frame comics, and Celia shared many jokes about her wizard mother and Mull father. In the serious part, Neville and Hannah, who are pure-blooded wizards, raised a lot of questions about Mulls from the perspective of wizards. Ryan chose a representative answer from inside. We disagree on this point, the twins whispered to Ryan in the common room. How can you say that the food in the Mull world is as diverse as that in the wizarding world? We used to go out from Diagon Alley to the Mull Street and found that the food there was extremely monotonous. Ryan was holding an article about after consultation on the diet, the twins offered different opinions. Oh, I am not meticulous here. Ryan added a qualifier in front of this passage, which became the same as the wizarding world in most countries in the Mull world except the United Kingdom. You know, it is just a case in the UK, Ryan said to the twins while revising the manuscript. In the outside world, the Industrial Revolution completely destroyed the traditional British diet. The modern British diet is convenient and fast but extremely monotonous, but the magic world retains the traditional rich British cuisine. Lane finally watched the twins leave with an unconscious expression. It seems that both the Industrial Revolution and the British tradition make the wizards feel a little difficult to understand. It can be seen that popularizing Mull knowledge is still a long way to go. After being busy for a week, This magazine named Look, This Is Mull was successfully published. The Weasley Joke Store takes this as another special product of its own. It may be because this magazine is not a serious magazine in itself, so it was sold very well in the joke shop by accident, which caused a lot of interest from wizards. Although most of them just view this as an entertainment magazine, it also exceeds the best situation that Ryan and Hermione had expected. Your book is really interesting. This is when the Weasley twins told Ryan one afternoon tea. At this time, Ryan and Hermione are sharing a snack of their favorite wizarding world, chocolate frog. Our mother thinks the exotic Mull food section in the magazine is very good, such as the one introduced in this issue. Speaking of his thoughts, he couldn't remember what the word was. Zongton chicken and sweet and sour pork tenderloin. George added, Mum feels that these two dishes are delicious, and she is trying to cook this dish better with magic. Your mother is really amazing. If she invented a more convenient magic cooking method, please send it to the magazine and share it with everyone. I think our mother will be very happy. The twins smiled and looked at each other. She is happy to share her experience of doing housework with everyone. After dinner, Ryan and Hermione continued to go to the library to review textbooks. As they were about to step up the stairs, they saw Harry and Ginny hugging in the hallway. What's wrong with them? Lane looked at the two curiously. How does it feel like Harry is going to be on the gallows? You are right. Hermione shrugged her shoulders. Harry is going to Snape to learn at Lumency now. It is no different for Harry to be seen by an enemy to see the secret in his brain and go to the execution ground. If Harry heard Hermione's words at this time, he would definitely agree with 100%. He felt from his heart that going to Snape was no different from going to the execution ground, especially at Snape to see him kissing Ginny. Those memories. But the worst thing is that what happened recently and his busy schoolwork have given him no time to practice occlusion. He knows that if he is still in this mood after he gets there, Snape will see him more easily. But he couldn't control his thoughts. That's why he was frustrated. Even if he had tried his best to empty his brain now, it was still messy until he walked to the door of Snape's office. You are late, Potter, Snape said coldly as Harry closed the door behind him. Do I need to remind you to come a little late? Of course, the busy savior may have a lot to do. No, Harry said bitterly, but just when he wanted to say something more, Snape started his attack. The two sides didn't meet for a few rounds, and Harry, who hadn't practiced much before, sat down on the ground weakly. Look, what I saw. Snape looked down at Harry mockingly. In addition to falling in love and writing homework as usual, this time you have more memory that you barely escaped by your friends. I am curious what a brain can't get out of a standard OWL's potion. Can things be done? Snape said in a slow voice. You shouldn't look at those. This is my personal privacy. Harry snarled with his hands propped up. Do you think I want to pay attention to these? Snape approached Harry. I have countless things to do, and I don't have time to care about what your childish child is thinking. But the problem is that if you don't close your brain, the mysterious person will also see these. It will definitely be more than you who I hurt. As everyone knows, as a powerful and playful black wizard, the mysterious man can easily use your memory as a weapon against you and everyone you value. If he wants, it can even be within a second. Invade into your heart. Snape's voice was cold, and every word he said was hammered on Harry's heart like a heavy hammer. Watching Harry just stared at him with his mouth closed, Snape further stimulated. You are like your father, arrogant, stupid, and can never grasp the point when doing things. You are not allowed to say this to my father. Harry, who was sitting on the ground because of dizziness, suddenly heard strength when he heard Snape say this, and suddenly stood up suddenly. Then please prove yourself, control your heart, and don't let your mental defenses and sieves let people infiltrate casually. After finishing, Snape used the Dementor again, and then looked at Harley fell on the ground. It's a fragile soul. Like your father, there is a disgusting soul hidden under the bright appearance. No, so say my father. Just as Snape stepped up to prepare for the next dementia, Harry didn't expect angrily to use dementia first. Perhaps this time Snape recalled the bad memories of his youth so that the defense of his brain is no longer as impenetrable as usual. Harry's attack was successful, and he just saw his father and Snape when he was young. www.mplnovel.com. In the school, the picture of how Harry's father and his gang bullied Snape was presented in front of Harry. Before, he had not been clear that he had not offended Snape. He hated, but now he knows the reason, especially when he saw that his mother, Lily Evans, had a very good relationship with Snape, even more than ordinary friendship. Harry saw his mother accuse him of school bullying problems in front of his father several times, and even took out his wand at him. After a campus violence, Snape, who spoke indifferently, somehow scolded the word mud. He had to admit that at that time his father was indeed no different from Malfoy. Just when he saw his father was about to step forward and peel off the Snape underwear that was hanging upside down, he grabbed his neck tightly with one hand, just like a vice. Obviously, physical problems will affect people's thinking, and Harry suddenly withdrew from Snape's memory. Do you think your father is glorious? Snape grabbed Harry's collar and pulled him over, but after staring at Harry for a moment, Snape let go of his hand. As a result, Harry almost stumbled to the ground again. Okay, get out. Harry's sorrow came out of Snape's tone at this moment. Your class is over. I don't want to see you in this office anymore. When Harry tried to say something, Snape waved his wand to let Harry fly out of the office, and then the door slammed shut. Chapter 430, Past. After being rushed out of the office, Harry wandered around in the Day's castle for a long time, and did not return to the Gryffindor common room until very late. When he went to have breakfast the next day, Harry had been in a state of turmoil. He could not accept that his father was the kind of person he hated most. His appearance of something was so obvious that anyone with a little familiarity could see his abnormality. After breakfast, under the pressure of Ginny, Harry finally confided to Ginny what he had encountered in the potion class. Lene and Hermione also greeted Harry with concern, but Harry only said that Snape felt he had some foundation now, so he could learn by himself. Ryan probably guessed what had happened, but Harry didn't want to say that he was naturally not talkative. "This means you are no longer taking occlusion?" Hermione asked, frowning. She had always felt that Harry should not stop accepting Snape's teaching before he could fully control those dreams, but Harry seemed impatient. Okay. Seeing the atmosphere getting hotter, Ryan reached out to stop Hermione. Harry doesn't accept Snape's guidance, and it's not a bad thing. I think that Harry's recent nightmares are so much related to the kind of rough dimensions before Snape. Those spells made Harry's brain become more fragile. I think Harry can take a break at this time. It may be better to take a little time and learn by myself. Maybe. You are right. Hermione was finally persuaded to stop mentioning the matter. As President Dumbledore was expelled, many articles that devalued Dumbledore began to appear in various magazines controlled by the Ministry of Magic. It seemed that Fudge wanted to completely destroy Dumbledore's prestige. However, unlike the situation after Dumbledore's death in the original book, a living top white wizard is not something others can humiliate at will, at least at the level of those reporters. Especially in any world, being able to be a reporter is a well-informed person. Now vaguely know some news about the genocide of the ancient vampire family and the last genocide of Europe's giants. In this case, they are vaguely mentioning something, but they dare not publish something much like Albus as in the original text. Books such as Dumbledore's Life and Lies. Even this extremely vague description still caused a stir in the wizarding world. People began to pay attention to what Dumbledore, considered the most powerful white wizard and symbol of justice, did when he was young. Since wizards generally live longer than muggles, many elderly people who have gone through the Grindelwald era have survived. In this case, many little wizards at Hogwarts got a lot of stories about Dumbledore's youth from their elders. With the spread of these news, the purpose of the Ministry of Magic has also reached a part. In Hogwarts Castle began to circulate a lot of bad news for Dumbledore. Is the news about Dumbledore true? On the third day of the Easter holiday, Ryan was making a new defensive bracelet in an empty classroom, and Hermione slammed the door in to see her under her arm. With a book in between, she knew she had just come from the library. What news? Ryan gently turned the crimson solution suspended in the air into a bracelet and placed it on the metal table next to it, then turned around and asked, "It's about Dumbledore's stories when he was young." Hermione looked incredulous. "I heard Ravenclaw's girl say that her grandmother was in Gordrak Valley, and she had seen Dumbledore and Grindelwald together when she was young." "It's not just that." Ryan took Hermione to sit at a table, then looked at Hermione and said, "I know more than you know. I can tell you if you want to listen." Hearing Ryan's words, Hermione immediately nodded, then stared at his eyes. Ryan smiled, and the pursuit of celebrity privacy is indeed human nature. It has nothing to do with the person's age, gender, and personality. Half an hour later, Hermione sat on the chair with a dull expression. The information she received before was really incredible. From the beginning of school, Dumbledore declared that love is the greatest power, and it feels like a kind grandfather. But in Ryan's account, she knew that Dumbledore had tried to build a world where muggles were ruled by wizards when he was young. This is really difficult for her to accept. Where do you find it difficult to accept? Is Dumbledore's approach to his family or his idea of trying to rule the world? Ryan produced a tea set and poured a cup of black tea for himself and Hermione. Naturally, is the idea of trying to rule the world. Hermione took a teacup and took a sip. If his sister is a taciturn, I can understand why Dumbledore hides his sister. Considering the attitude of the wizards towards the werewolf, I know that he was the best choice to hide his sister at that time, and in the end the death of my sister was also an accident. It is not appropriate to blame him completely. It is because I really cannot understand why he had the idea of ruling the world when he was young, especially the sentence for the greatest benefit was actually proposed by him. This is normal. Ryan also raised his teacup and took a sip. You think about the tragedy in his family that was caused by what the three Muggle boys did to his sister. In that case, it is natural for him to hate Muggles. But you have to pay attention, even under such circumstances Dumbledore is still awakened. Recognizing his own mistakes and personally correcting the damage he caused, he then defeated his lover in the duel, and then persisted for so many years doing justice and cultivating small wizards from generation to generation. From the results, we can see that Dumbledore was at most confused at an early stage, but after he woke up, he always insisted on justice and struggled with various evil forces. That's why I don't agree with some of his views, but I still think he is a great wizard. Yeah. Our headmaster is not a god. He will make mistakes naturally. But he made mistakes when he was young and corrected them, and finally made up for the losses caused by the mistakes personally. www.mtlnovel.com. We can't be because he is young. The mistake at the time denied his greatness. Hermione woke up and seemed more lively than before. By the way, Grindelwald you just said is Dumbledore's lover? After clearing up his biggest doubts, Hermione moved her focus to a strange direction. You heard it right. Our principal's sexual orientation is not so mainstream. But the wizarding world is much more enlightened than the Muggles in this respect. For the next 10 minutes, the two began to talk about the relationship between the wizard and the Muggles. Different places, at the same time accumulate some interesting information for their magazines. Oh, when will the next issue of the magazine be issued? Ryan asked shortly after speaking of the magazine. On sale in the middle of this month, Hermione said confidently. Thanks to the stupid policy of the Ministry of Magic, we have recruited several excellent hemp wizards like Penlo as people who understand the two worlds. They have a great advantage in compiling this magazine. Seriously, yes, I think they are capable of holding some important positions in the Ministry of Magic. Even the worst one is much better than Umbridge. These outstanding wizards can only do the lowest level of work in the Ministry of Magic, and lack enough promotion space just because they are Muggles. This is why they must make up their minds to change all this. Ryan said seriously. Yes, this thing is indeed worth betting on everything to do. Hermione nodded in agreement. Even if the price is life, whether it is the mysterious man and his running dogs or ours. Chapter 431, Employment Consulting. The story about Dumbledore was loud and noisy in the school. But 5th and 7th graders don't have much time to struggle with this matter, because they are only 6 weeks away from the exam. Both Harry and Ron are in a state of extreme frustration. Harry felt a little depressed after seeing some of the bad things his father did in his school days, because it was not the same as his father Ryan's figure in his impressions. Ron was worried about his exams and Quidditch. In both respects, he felt that he had not prepared enough. But their bad mental state appeared normal in Gryffindor's tower, and no one noticed their separate thoughts, because the exam is driving everyone who is going to take the exam crazy. Oh my god. Hermione dropped her pen in the common room and wiped her face with both hands. I can't really remember all the knowledge of the ancient magic texts. What if I fail the exam? You're overly worried. Ryan sitting opposite also put down the pen. We have more self-taught rune literature than there is in the classroom, and not so much in the exam. The knowledge you have now is enough to get O in the exam, so try to relax a little to be more conducive to getting good grades in the exam. After finishing, Ryan took out an Easter egg and peeled off the packaging, then broke a piece and handed it to Hermione. The egg was beautifully made, and a golden cauldron was painted with frosting on it. Take some chocolate and take a break. This was given to me by Mrs. Weasley. Her craftsmanship is really good. Thank you. Hermione took the chocolate and ate it, probably as a candy. Her spirit looked better. After taking out her handkerchief and wiping her hands, Hermione asked Ryan, well, have you read those brochures about careers recently? It seems to emphasize the importance of the upcoming exams. During the Easter holiday, a large number of brochures about the various wizarding professions appeared in Hogwarts. For example, Hermione now has a book on the table in front of them. Again and again. No, you know my situation, Ryan whispered after glancing around to make sure no one had eavesdropped. I plan to become a professional alchemist in the future, so that I have enough time to do something else. Too busy life is not what I pursue. Naturally, the things in these brochures are not useful to me. Just you can help me think about it. I was planning to go to the Ministry of Magic, but now I found that the Ministry of Magic can't fulfill my dream, Hermione said with her hair falling in front of her eyes. Well, you can try to go back to Hogwarts as a professor, Ryan said after thinking for a while. Later change the world by changing the minds of young people. And now every professor in the school is not young. At this time, they should hope to find some young people who can succeed them. Sounds like a good idea, and, thank you for your comfort today. Hermione's mouth curled up. Then he stood up with his hands on the table and leaned over his upper body to kiss Ryan like a dragonfly. Ryan was a little confused by the sudden attack. After he reacted, he only saw Hermione standing upright, looking at him with his hands behind his back with a smile on his back. Under such emotional infection, Ryan also laughed, as if all the difficulties and problems have been solved. When they finished practicing to go to dinner this afternoon, they found a notice about employment counseling posted on the bulletin board of Hogwarts, which required all 5th grade students to participate in a short one in the first week of the summer semester talks and discuss future employment issues with the dean of their college. At the end of the notice, a timetable was attached, and Ryan found that he was going to Professor McGonagall's office at 4 p.m. on Monday. This means that he needs to run to Professor McGonagall's office as quickly as possible after finishing his divination. On the first day after the end of the Halloween holiday, Ryan came to Professor McGonagall's office on time after finishing his divination. Perhaps because his previous performance has been good, Professor McGonagall believes that as long as Ryan can do it step by step in the future, he will definitely become a powerful alchemist, and he is likely to become an alchemist like Nicole May. Okay, relax. As long as you can level it out, Professor McGonagall raised her hand to reveal a copper bracelet on her wrist. These are the reliable and high-level wizards of the Phoenix Society. Prepare something. Originally, Ryan planned to give Professor McGonagall a silver bracelet, but Professor McGonagall thought he would not be in danger in school, so he gave the silver bracelet to the field staff, and he only took a copper bracelet with the lowest grade. I believe that you who can make this kind of thing will never be stumped by a small OWL's exam. During dinner in the evening, he learned that Hermione also got good news in employment counseling. Professor McGonagall told her that as Professor Dumbledore's age increased, as a vice-chancellor, she needed more time to be busy with the school. On official business, she felt a little bit powerless in the course of morphology. She very much welcomes young people who can help her share these tasks. So as long as I can maintain excellent results and pass the final NEWT's test, Hogwarts is very willing to provide me with a post like a teaching assistant. Finally Hermione concluded with a smile. Sounds great, Lane said with a smile. Yes, the grilled salmon tastes good tonight. You can eat more. When Ryan handed the plate with grilled salmon to Hermione, Ryan felt that someone was sitting next to him. He turned his head to find out that the person he found was Neville, and he could see that he was in a good mood by humming Xiok and pulling potato salad on his plate. What good thing makes you so happy? Lane swallowed the lamb in his mouth and turned to ask Neville. Ryan. Only then did Neville discover that Ryan was sitting next to him. He said to Ryan happily, the reading club really helped me a lot. Professor McGonagall feels that my current level is not excellent but it also far exceeded her expectations, and now I have several good career directions to choose from. In this way, my grandma will be satisfied. Oh, what occupation? Hermione asked curiously. A herbalist or a planter of magic plantations, or even a professional researcher of magic plants. www.mtlnovel.com. Many years ago, Newt Scamander wrote, where is the magical animal? Let the wizard's knowledge of magical animals has taken a big step forward. But so far no wizard has done the same research on magical plants as he did, so that we know many magical plants in addition to medicinal magical plants. It's almost blank, which is definitely inappropriate. Great dream, Ryan said seriously in Neville's eyes. This kind of thing always needs to be done by someone. A person like you who can withstand loneliness I think is the best at this job. Hermione also smiled. Nodded support to Neville. You guys believe me? Neville looked excited. Don't you think I'm bragging? Of course not. Lane patted Neville's shoulder. When I think about it, maybe I still have a chance to travel the world with you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Neville seemed a little excited. In the past few years, he has been receiving everyone's help in the book club. It is because of everyone's help that he can do this step today. In his impressions, both Ryan who organized the book club and Hermione who helped him most are worthy of his thanks. Aren't our book clubs established to help like-minded people? Hermione said in a kind tone. So this is what we should do. Thank you all in any case. Finally Neville wiped tears from the corners of his eyes. I'm going back to write to my grandmother to let her know that I finally don't embarrass my family. Chapter 432, Giants, Horsemen and Finals. Near the end of May, perhaps because the brain is no longer torn, Harry's spirit looks much better. However, because every 5th grade student has been busy recently, he naturally has not spared much time to practice the brain closure technique class. In this way, because of the busy study, when Harry went to bed many times, his mind seemed to be filled with what he had learned, and he could not sleep at all, and when he fell asleep, on most nights, he was too nervous of the brain. It's all silly dreams about exams, but besides that, sometimes he still dreams about the crystal ball on the dark corridor and the dusty shelf. But the only thing he felt gratified was that a part of his brain felt guilty when it walked down the corridor to the black door at the end, and would try to wake him up before he reached the end of the journey. Naturally, Harry didn't dare to tell others about these things, otherwise either Ginny or Hermione would force him to go to Snape again for torture. In this kind of hesitation, Gryffindor's game against Ravenclaw is about to begin, which is also the final of the Quidditch season. Although Hufflepuff beat Slytherin in the last game, Gryffindor did not dare to expect to win the game. This was mainly caused by Ron's poor goalkeeping record, but he himself was very optimistic. It's fine, Lane said to Hermione. At least Ron's interception success rate is not low when he is in a good mood. The night before the game, Ryan secretly went to the settlement of the Horsemen, because before Fearens told Ryan Hagrid's brother to hide in the Forbidden Forest, Ryan had always wanted to help the Horsemen. Naturally, chopping out Hagrid's brother was the first plan to be excluded, because as a small giant, Hagrid's younger brother must have no chance to eat human flesh, and he shouldn't be according to Ryan's bottom line. So after thinking for a long time, Ryan finally thought of a solution from the direction of alchemy. Today, he went to the Forbidden Forest to deliver the alchemy products to those horsemen. Came to the village of Marin and saw Wolf chasing his tail there. Ryan stepped forward to say hello. Wolf, good evening. What about Aunt Betty? Aunt Betty is waiting for you at her house. You can just go straight in. Wolf squatted and said, that's right. I'm almost finished reading the pile of books for me. Do you have any other books? Of course. Which category do you want to read? Ryan asked. Last time you asked me for encyclopedia and history books. What do you want to read this time? Well, Do you have any books about the outside world? Wolf looked up at Ryan and asked, I want to know what the world outside the forest is like. I seem to really have this kind of book. I'll take it out after we go to your house, otherwise we have to carry it. After listening to Wolf's words, Ryan felt a little sad. Just before he put a large number of books in the Wonji grocery store as a transaction, and there was a complete set of travel manuals that could be given to Wolf. Came to Wolf's house, and Ryan found that this house was no different from other horses' houses. They are all 4-meter-high spire cabins with high and wide doors. After opening the door, Wolf opened the cloth on the lantern grass at home. The light suddenly lit up the room. Wolf's house is very simple. Except for a small table, a few bookshelves with books and other things, there is only a small nest made of soft plant fibers. According to him, because he can't cook, he usually goes to Aunt Betty's house to rub the rice, so there is no need to prepare cooking utensils and tableware at home. Lean took out the book that had been put in from the Wonji grocery store and helped Wolf to put it next to the little dwarf, and then he said goodbye to Wolf, who couldn't wait to start reading. Some guys are not as good as a wolf. Ryan thought of Crab and Goal, who were looking for something by investigating the team's name recently. When he walked to the door of Aunt Betty's house, he discovered that Aunt Betty was already standing at the door waiting for him. Sorry, I just sent some books to Wolf just to keep you waiting. Ryan quickly apologized. Wolf has become calm recently. This should be the benefit of reading. Thank you for giving him so many books, Betty said with a smile. Furthermore, the wind will tell me all the information around here. I also just come out. I haven't been waiting for you here. You don't have to apologize for this. After a few words of greeting, Ryan took out 12 bracelets from his arms, each of which was hung with several bells. These bracelets are made of dark steel, but if you get closer, you will see beautiful patterns on them. In addition to this, Betty saw the bracelets inlaid with dense silver runes the size of green beans. However, under the moonlight, these runes seemed to reflect the light of blood. Betty took the bracelets and reached out to touch them, using natural magic to induce a while, and then bowed her head and asked, the giants were killed by you a few months ago? I can sense their wailing from these bracelets. Yes, Ryan nodded. They eat people, and I killed them. These bracelets were made after melting the axe gun that killed the giant. Just shake the bell above, and the giant in the Forbidden Forest. Naturally you will be shocked. You didn't have to worry about the giant destroying the Forbidden Forest. Then thank you. I really trouble you, Betty said with a smile. As a natural spellcaster, she is not like vegetarians or extreme environmentalists. In her eyes, giants eat people. Then there must be the consciousness of being killed, whether they eat people or they are killed. This is a cycle in nature. So she had no bad feelings for Ryan killing the giants. Then I will go back. I hope that the Forbidden Forest will restore the silence of the past. After saying goodbye to Aunt Betty, Lane returned to Hogwarts Castle. The next morning was the final. Because the Slytherin in the previous investigation group was too reckless, everyone launched many attacks under intolerable circumstances. Several Slytherin Quidditch team members who were members of the investigation team were hospitalized in the conflict. www.mtlnovel.com. Under such circumstances, Hufflepuff successfully defeated Slater in a previous game Forest. This also gave Gryffindor a chance to win. After having breakfast, Lane took Hermione to the stadium. Unfortunately, they came a little late, and it took a lot of time to find the seat at the highest point of the stands. It's clear and cloudless today. It's a perfect weather for the Quidditch game. Within a few minutes of the game, Lane discovered that Hagrid and Harry had disappeared from the stands. This is not the two people he is concerned about, but Hagrid's size is really difficult to ignore him. What did Harry do? Hermione also discovered this. It is estimated that Hagrid would like to introduce Harry to his younger brother. Lane looked at the court and replied smoothly, I gave the horse people an idea, and the younger brother who wanted to come to Hagrid would not cause them trouble. Now, that's great. Oh, it's terrible, Hermione exclaimed, when Ron missed a ball from Davis. Fortunately, in the following game, Ron successfully saved the other balls, and finally Ginny caught the thieves in front of Janker with a half-hand length advantage. After the joyous crowd below carried Ron away, Ryan and Hermione walked from the top of the stand back to the castle. On the way they happened to see Harry coming out of the Forbidden Forest. Harry also had a smile on his face. It seemed that what Ryan had given the horses had effect, and Hagrid's brother should not be so irritable now. In short, today is a perfect day. Chapter 433, Remarks. June is here, the weather is slowly getting hotter, and the daytime is getting longer and longer. The sun shines on the ground, making the lake, lawn, and even Hogwarts Castle sparkle. But for 5th graders, this only means one thing. Their OWL's exam is finally here. The college was a little excited for a day or two after the Quidditch match ended, but soon the pressure of the exam once again silenced these 5th and 7th grade students. All professors no longer give them homework, except for Professor Binns. All the class time is used to review the questions that professors think are most likely to appear in the exam. As for Professor Binns, since death can't stop him from teaching, so the small OWL's exam will naturally not. But everyone learned to recite something to recite in his class or take a short break. Ryan and Hermione shared their notes to the students who came to ask, which naturally gained a lot of affection. In particular, The members of the book club who face the exam have two people's notes for them. The practice in the book club makes them no problem in the practical application of magic. However, some additional help is needed in the recitation of certain texts. Many students have shown strange behaviors. For example, Ernie Macmillan is more and more fond of inquiring about the review time of others, and Malfoy brags about their family connections in public. Hermione is also. Ryan finds that she often mutters to herself now, and that her long concentration of studies has confused her biological clock. He could only take Hermione to dinner every day, and let her take a break. Otherwise, it is estimated that she will always use the nutrients that Ryan sent her to radiate the world to solve the problem of eating. Of course, as a magical world, many wizards have tried to use magic to solve problems, such as some magic potions. Ryan saw Ravenclaw 6th grade Redica Mitchell want to sell Harry and Ron a bottle of brainwashing agent, and the two of them seemed very interested, and even Harry was already starting to touch his wallet. Two fools. Seeing this scene, Hermione put down the pen and walked over. This is also what she and Ryan have often done as Commander-in-Chief recently, confiscating apparently problematic medicines. In the past 2 days, they have confiscated more than 30 bottles of things that claim to be focused, refreshing, and sober. Harry and Ron actually believed this thing was useful. Hermione put the medicine on the table, and after sniffing it, Ryan sniffed it and immediately figured out what it was. Some kind of refreshing medicament with a pile of useless ingredients. Lane put the bottle on the table. This group of Ravenclaws is at least a bit higher than the guys in our hospital. For example, the dried and ground fox feces posing as dragon claw powder. Seriously, the dragon claw powder can really make people in a few hours. The memory is particularly good, but the price is that the brain will be in a short circuit from time to time for the next few days. If you use this short circuit, it will become a permanent problem. Yeah, but there are so many people who want to buy it, I really can't figure it out. Hermione picked up the book and began to recite it. Just like everyone exchanged classmates before the college entrance examination, Hogwarts Castle is also full of parting, especially the lower grade lovers of some 7th graders. For example, Ryan saw Janka crying with Cedric in the corner that day. In the defamation course, Professor McGonagall, the vice principal, informed everyone of the specific time of the exam and the specific arrangements during the exam. This is much more lenient than the college entrance examination arrangement, and not every day there is an exam. In the exam, all written tests are arranged in the morning, and practical operations are arranged in the afternoon. Of course, the same as the head teacher before the college entrance examination and the school leaders. The thing that has been reiterated over and over again is that cheating is strictly prohibited. Professor McGonagall has explained to every student how perfect the anti-cheating measures for this exam are. I must remind you that the strictest anti-cheating practices have been imposed on your paper mantra. It is strictly forbidden to bring automatic answering quills into the exam hall, in addition to memory balls, removable cuffs and automatic error correction ink. Of course, the effect of this kind of speech is not very good. As Professor McGonagall said, every year someone tries to cross this rule to pass himself the exam, and their end is terrible. But these have nothing to do with Ryan, because he has reviewed all of them. Finally, under the inquiry of Hermione, Professor McGonagall told everyone that in July there will be an owl to send the report card to everyone. Ryan felt that at that time, he might have come back to visit his parents from heaven. Otherwise, the examination committee had to find a long-distance owl to send transcripts to himself and Hermione. On the last Sunday before the exam, Ryan spent the last day of an extremely fulfilling exam. After the review was completed, he promised Hermione to help her review on Sunday. As a result, he released no less than 15 life magics for appeasing emotions throughout the day. Because Hermione seemed very agitated during the review, always retrieving the textbook from his hand, checking whether his answer was correct, and even almost taking the book on Ryan's face. Even with the help of magic, Hermione was still not very calm. Even Ryan, who was sitting on her left while eating, could see her take out the book to read. In the end, Ryan really couldn't read it, but covered it in his book with his hand. I am going to take the NEWT test directly at your current level. I guess I can get all O. Let us eat well now. Otherwise, the stomach will be difficult to be tested tomorrow. After a few seconds of deadlock, Hermione took a deep breath and then nodded to collect the book. Afterwards, he absently finished the whole meal. While eating, Umbridge was very nervous to walk in with a small group of old wizards and wizards. No matter how arrogant she was in school, she could only respect the elders in the magic world. Talk to them. For example, the wrinkles on the face, like the old Jezza band covered with a spider web, repeatedly said that Hogwarts let the unfavorable principals leave. Umbridge was as ugly as she swallowed a big mouthful of bad juice, but she dared not say a word. This makes most students feel very relieved when they look at it. Think about it, too, and be able to be a proctor teacher for Dumbledore, who is now 112 years old. www.mplnovel.com can still be a proctor teacher for so many years. One can imagine the level and connections of this old wizard. Not to mention that these examiners are not even under the jurisdiction of the Minister of Magic. They have enough strength and connections to ignore the Ministry's instructions. For example, The examiner who oversaw Harry's black magic defense in the original text did not take into account the intention of the Ministry of Magic to suppress Harry. So in the face of these people, Umbridge must endure even if it is criticized by all kinds. Otherwise, if she dares to talk back today, it is estimated that she will get out of the Ministry of Magic tomorrow, and even Fudge will not be able to protect her. That night, most of the students who took the exam tomorrow lighted up the incense from the Weasley twins before going to bed in the dormitory. When eating breakfast early the next morning, except for those Slytherin students who insisted on not buying from pureblood traitors and the mud breeds, most of the remaining students were in good spirits. According to Professor McGonagall, "You are the best group of students who have been in the exam state since I became a professor." It seems that the Weasley joke shop is about to produce a fist product soon, and Ryan thought of seeing everyone's status. After eating, the students in other grades went to class. The 7th and 5th graders wandered aimlessly in the hall, and they could see that they were terribly panicked. Ryan is a rare exception. Not only is he not nervous, he also has the time to comfort his acquaintances. This is quite normal. How can anyone who has seen the battlefield of thousands of horses and the same army of thousands of horses in the Tankow College entrance examination room be too nervous before this kind of examination? Finally, the time reached 9:30, and the exam was about to begin. Chapter 434, End of Exam. After the exam started, they were called into the auditorium according to the college. At this time, the arrangement in the auditorium has changed, and it is filled with single tables and chairs for the exam, all facing the staff table at the end of the auditorium. The test room list looks random, probably to prevent cheating. When Ryan sat down in his place, he found that half of the seats in the auditorium were already occupied. After everyone was seated, Professor McGonagall, standing on the desk of the staff, announced the start of the exam. Ryan immediately opened the test paper. The first question, yes. The second question, the same. The last question, yes. Ryan found that the amount of knowledge he had accumulated unconsciously was already considerable. These test questions were much simpler than he thought. After repeatedly telling himself to be careful, don't be proud, Ryan began to whisper on the test paper with a quill. After he finished writing, he didn't even finish half of the sand in the hourglass. This made Ryan doubt that he might have missed something. After all, he had heard of some people with insufficient IQ in his previous life who did not find that there was a problem on the other side of the paper. After careful inspection twice, he confirmed that there was no problem at all, and the next time Ryan could only spend it in boredom. This exam is the same as the college entrance exam. There are no special circumstances that are not allowed to leave the exam room in advance. This question is simpler than we thought. After the exam, Hermione found Ryan at the table. Probably because of the two-day exam, lunch was obviously better than usual. When Hermione was talking, Ryan was stuffing a roasted and delicious lamb meat into her mouth. I can feel that I got all the answers right, but I can't help but check them many times. There is also question 18, I may have answered too much. It's okay, you've answered it well enough. Lane swallowed the lamb and interrupted Hermione's guts. So you hurried to have something to eat, and there are practical exams in the afternoon. At the entrance of the small room next to the auditorium in the afternoon, the member of the reading club, Hufflepuff female class leader Han Rabbit, was the first to be called in to take the practical exam. Every time I press the name is my first one. Waiting is the most tormenting. Hermione and Greengrass went in a batch. However, none of the students who finished the exam returned, so Ryan did not know how Hermione did. While waiting, many people still muttered spells, practiced the movement of paralyzed staff, and sometimes accidentally poked others' backs or eyes. Finally, Ryan heard Professor Flitwick yelling his name. The examiner he was assigned was a serious-looking old lady with grey hair, and her eyes were as sharp as falcons. Let Ryan think of Neville's grandmother. Please follow my instructions to release the spell on this cup. Of course, if you have any skills to show, you can get extra points. As soon as he stood at the table, Ryan heard the examiner announce the rules of the exam. Lean uses the silent spell technique to release the floating spell, the color change spell, and the growth spell when allowed to leave. The examiner nodded in satisfaction. After a tense evening, Ryan passed the morphology exam the next day, whether it was a theory class or a practical operation. For a high-level alchemist, the exam questions are even too simple. However, this is not the case for others. Hannah was so nervous during the exam that she dropped her wand on the ground. As a result, several ostriches were inexplicably changed on the floor. People spent several minutes trying to get these guys out. The following exams were smooth and smooth. Wednesday's herbal medicine passed easily with Ryan's natural magic ability, as did Thursday's black magic defense class. Ryan also received extra points for his crab patron saint. But this is not too noticeable, because there are more wizards who can release the guardian deity of the flesh during the exam this year than in previous years. But Umbridge, a professor of black magic defense, is not happy. After all, the patron saint is the nemesis of Dementors, and all Dementors in the United Kingdom are employees of the Ministry of Magic. In this way, the wizard's attitude towards the Ministry of Magic can be imagined. And did the ancient magic test on Friday and the busy weekend. In the new week, Ryan finished the potion test, counting for divination, magical animal protection and astronomy. What is different from the original is that because the Weasley twins have not left, there are not so many disturbances in the school, and Umbridge naturally does not want to have nothing to do at this important moment, and insists on expelling the professor. I can finally give up arithmetic divination, magical animal protection, and astronomy in the future. After returning to the common room after the astronomy operation, Lane said slightly tired. Even if the content of the exam is not difficult for him, it is inevitable that he will be tired after the 2-week exam. Their last exam is the history of magic, which will not take place until the afternoon, because this exam is only written. So Ryan slept the next day and didn't get up until 9 in the morning. When he went downstairs, he found that many students were reading notes in the common room. Her 3.5 thick copy of her notes appeared in front of many classmates, but Ryan felt it would be too late to see these things if he hadn't studied them well before. Here, I will bring you some food. After sitting down beside Hermione, she handed Ryan 2 sandwiches wrapped in handkerchief. There is another exam that will end. I hope I can get good results for this exam. It must be. Lane gave Hermione a big smile. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the 5th grader walked into the auditorium and sat down in front of the reversed test paper. At this time, every student in the examination room was in a calm mood, because after a long period of preparation and continuous examinations, this period of suffering finally came to an end. As long as the exam is finished, they can take a good rest and then relax for a while. Professor Ghostbins also did not appear to accompany the proctor. Everyone was exhausted. Just want to end this long exam quickly. Turn your test papers out, Professor McCaban said in front of the auditorium while immediately buckling up the huge hourglass. You can start. These exam questions are not simple recitations. For example, the 4th question is, according to your opinion, did the wand regulations facilitate or help to better control the 18th century Goblin riot? This is much more difficult than the 5th question. How was the Confidentiality Act violated in 1749? www.mtlnovel.com. What bill was proposed later to prevent similar situations from recurring? Because this is a divergent argument, there is no ready-made answer. This kind of test questions are calculated by scoring points, and the examiner will also give points based on the completeness of the points answered. There are not many problems in this category. A large number of historical facts are needed to support each argument. Each question can be regarded as a small paper, answered less than half, and Ryan felt his head started to buzz. Fortunately, with perseverance, he finally finished writing the whole paper. After finishing the paper, he raised his head from time to time to look at the hourglass placed at the front, and occasionally glanced at Harry sitting in front with the corners of his eyes. If he remembered correctly, in the original plot, it was during this exam that Harry saw Voldemort grabbing Sirius. Now, Ryan is most concerned about whether Harry will see any pictures this time. Although according to Harry's previous dreams, Voldemort was still preparing for the prophecy ball in the Division of Mystery Affairs according to historical inertia. But nothing happened. After Ryan finished the last question about the deportation of the giant, he waited until Professor McCaban asked all the students to put down the pen and began to wind up. Nothing happened. Harry didn't receive it as he did. The signal from Voldemort did not fall to the ground like the original text. What exactly is Voldemort planning? Ryan frowned as he walked out of the examination room, seeming to be out of tune with the others. He found himself in the mist, and this unknown was extremely disturbing. Chapter 435, Mutation. The night after the test, everyone was very happy. Even with the help of the Weasley twins, the 5th and 7th graders of Gryffindor held a small party in the common room. This reminded Ryan of the karaoke experience he had with some very close classmates after the college entrance examination. Naturally everyone is happy on this occasion, but because of the previous review, everyone is a little exhausted. So after a short time, everyone took a break. Harry too. After laying down the biggest burden in his heart recently, he quickly fell asleep in bed. At the beginning, he was sleeping as usual, and his eyes were black. But soon, the black faded slowly, and some grey pictures appeared in Harry's mind. He once again walked in the cold and dark Mysterious Affairs Department corridor, with firm steps and decisive steps, occasionally running a few steps. He finally determined that he must reach his destination. He didn't pay attention to the surrounding scene along the way. After passing through the 3 doors, Harry was again in a cathedral-like room full of shelves and glass balls. His heart was beating like something was urging him. Very quickly, when you walk to the 97th row of shelves according to your inner guidance, turn left and walk in a hurry along the long aisle between the 2 rows of shelves. On the floor at the end of the aisle, there was a figure moving on the floor. Harry felt a voice coming out of his own mouth, a cold, high voice, without any human kindness. Get it for me. Fast, get it. I can't touch it. You can touch. The black figure on the floor moved slightly. A long, white hand with a finger tightly grasped a wand and lifted it up, and heard the sharp, cold voice saying, "Drill your heart." Harry was shocked to find that it was he who fired the heart-cursing curse. In the spell, the man crawling on the floor screamed painfully, trying to stand up, but wriggled and collapsed. Harry was laughing. He raised his wand, the spell stopped, and the figure groaned and stopped moving. Voldemort is waiting. The man on the ground was shaking his arms. He very slowly propped his shoulders up a few inches and raised his head. His face was stained with blood, very haggard, and the pain was distorted, but still with a firm and unyielding look. "You must kill me." "Undoubtedly, I will," the cold voice said. "But you have to give it to me first." "Black, do you think you have so much pain?" "Think again. In the next few hours, no one can hear your scream." Just as Voldemort lowered his wand, Harry screamed and rolled on the bed. But he woke up after striking his head against the bed, still screaming in his mouth, and the scar was like a red iron mark. "Harry." Ron stood beside him with a look of fear. "Who is this time again? Who was injured again?" "Sirius." Sirius was caught by Voldemort. Harry's eyes were blurred with pain, but he still grabbed Ron's arm with enthusiasm because he thought it was very important. "Go and notify Professor McGonagall." "But Professor McGonagall is not in school," Ron stuttered. "You know, she escorted our test paper back to London after finishing the test today." "Damn it." Harry hammered the bed beneath him, and then got up and said in a loud voice, "But I can't watch Sirius die. I'm going to the Department of Mystery, to save him." "But buddy." At this time he was pulled by Ron. "What's the difference between rushing to death like this? Don't forget that your opponent is a mysterious person. What's the point of having to die by one more person like this in your past?" At this time, the door of their dormitory was pushed open, and Ryan came out from behind Neville. "What happened?" "I was awakened by Neville just after sleeping for a while, and he told me that Harry seemed to have gotten sick. To let me see." "Look." "No, it's not sick." Ron looked at Ryan and said, "But Harry had a dream, just like the dream when my father was bitten a few months ago. But this time the mysterious kid kidnapped Sirius." After hearing this sentence, the whole person stiffened, but he quickly relaxed. Instead, it was a feeling of relief, because it means that Voldemort really started to execute that plan, and everything is back on track. "I know you are nervous now, but the question now is whether you see something real." Ryan pulled out his wand and relieved Harry's pain with mental soothing magic. "You need to know that your observation is two-way, especially when the other party's power is stronger than you. He can perceive you. I am worried that this is a trap that exposes you from a safe castle. You know that you may be in the top 3 on the mysterious man's kill list." But Sirius. Harry was interrupted by Ryan's hand before he finished speaking. "I remember Sirius gave you a double-sided mirror. You can ask." "Damn, I actually forgot this thing." Harry slapped his forehead violently, then rummaged through the box under the bed, and finally found a badly wrapped packet in the corner of the box. After opening the packet, inside was a small square mirror that was dirty and old. At the same time, there is also a note written by Sirius on the use of this mirror. After reading the note, Harry raised it to his eyes with both hands, and called loudly and clearly, "Sirius." The mirror responded within a few seconds, but it was Clay's wrinkled face. "Where is Sirius?" "Kreacher?" Harry asked after seeing Kreacher. "Master is out." The house elf gasped and laughed softly. "He went to travel to Miss Straw, and I really hope that the next generation of the Black family will be born earlier. I'm happy to bring them children. I want to ask him if he hasn't come back, will he go to the Ministry of Magic?" Harry quickly interrupted Kreacher, because Kreacher had already begun to talk about what baby bottle and diaper the newborn used. "Of course not, Harry Potter." Kreacher looked at Harry. "When the master went out this morning, he said that he would go to Marseille with Miss Straw. www.mplenovel.com. How could he go to the Ministry of Magic? Then can you call the members of the Order of the Phoenix? I have important information to inform them." After listening to this sentence, Clay appeared in another room with a snap, and Harry saw Lupin sitting with rubbing his eyes. "Stand up." "What? You saw Sirius was caught?" Lupin looked shocked. "Don't move before you stay in the castle. I'll inform others." "You must not move around, let alone leave the castle." After speaking, the double-sided mirror was dark, and everyone in the dormitory was waiting nervously. But there was no new news until dawn. "Ryan, what's the matter with you?" Hermione looked at Ryan in amazement. The next morning at breakfast, "How did you feel worse after the exam?" Ryan could only get Hermione's ear to whisper what happened, and after hearing the explanation, Hermione thought it was a way Voldemort tried to trick Harry out of the castle. But while Ryan was having dinner, the bad news was brought by Hermione. Kreacher used a double-sided mirror to inform the members of the Harry Phoenix Society that they found the stunned Miss Straw in Marseille. According to her statement, yesterday afternoon when he and Sirius walked on the beach, suddenly 7 or 8 people in black rushed out. Although they fought hard, they were still outnumbered. Finally, she saw Sirius captured by the group of people before she fell into a coma. Voldemort was directly tied this time. Ryan was shocked by the news. The current situation has greatly deviated from the original plot. It seems that the Battle of the Ministry of Magic is inevitable. Chapter 436, Invasion. Ministry of Magic. "Harry, what is going on?" After dinner for 2 or 2, Ryan and Hermione rushed to the common room and found Harry. At this time, everyone else was eating below. Swingy common room. In the empty common room, only Ron, Ginny and the twins stood beside Harry, and Harry fell on the sofa, looking ugly. "I heard Ginny say that Harry had come back after dinner and had that nightmare again," Hermione whispered close to Ryan. Then Harry went to Professor McGonagall, but Professor McGonagall asked him to be quiet here waiting for news. He will never be allowed to leave school. Professor McGonagall is right, we can't afford to be missing anymore, let alone this kidnapping seems a little unusual. But Ryan was interrupted before he finished. But what is missing is my only loved one. I have to find him. Professor McGonagall, Professor Dumbledore, and even Lupin. They are kind enough to let me stay here. I know, but Sirius means to me and completely to them not the same. They may give up Sirius for my safety. After all, the Phoenix Society has not been sacrificed before. I cannot sit here. Not to mention that I think Voldemort already knows that I am watching him, and this is noon. The dream is his warning to me. If I don't show up in the Department of Mystery, Voldemort will probably kill Sirius. If this is your decision, please let me go with you. Ginny stood up first. She looked at Harry's amazed face. You don't think I will allow you to face this alone? Yes, and we are already adults, and some things should be done. This is the answer for the Weasley twins. I am your best friend, how can you let you take risks alone? Ron continued. Okay, although I still think it's stupid to do this. But it's obviously not enough to rely on you alone. Ryan is also preparing to go to the Ministry of Magic. After all, he has been coveting the good things of the Mystery Department for a long time, and this time finally has the opportunity to mix in. Certainly not let go. Not to mention that he was worried that if something changed, what would happen to Harry? I said, I will follow you in your future adventures. Hermione shook Ryan's hand and looked at him. Listen to me, this is my own business. You don't. As a result, Harry had attracted several people to protest before he had finished speaking. To make his scar soar again, Harry realized that every minute of their delay was precious. He had no time to argue. Okay, very good, this is your choice, he said hastily. But the problem is that now all external communication channels in Hogwarts are monitored by the Old Woman of Umbridge, and we do not have enough flying broom. So how can I get to London? It's simple. Ryan stood up and said, Fred and George have a secret passage to Hogsmeade. Once in town, we can use the fireplace of the Weasley joke shop to directly rush to the general manager of Diagon Alley using the flyway net in the shop. In this case we will start now. Harry eagerly wanted to start. However, Ryan and Hermione asked to go upstairs to make some preparations. When Ryan came down, he found that only Hermione was wearing the leather armor waiting for him under the school uniform robe. How about Harry? They set off first. At this time, Hermione recognized the box in Ryan's hand at once. You brought the rose crystal. Is it in such a bad situation now? It's worse than you think, Ryan said and took out the meteorite amulet that could block a death curse to hang Hermione's neck. So just now I called the Sisters of Rose Crystal again. Now it's all in the box. This big game of the mysterious man is definitely not going to be a trifle. We will face a war. Starting from the secret passage behind the one-eyed witch sculpture, Ryan and Hermione rushed to the Weasley joke shop's branch in Hogsmeade within an hour. Before leaving, they specially left a letter to Professor McGonagall to inform the situation, hoping to get the support of the Phoenix Society by then. Ryan didn't think that a group of little wizards could confront Voldemort and a large group of Death Eaters directly. In the backyard of the Weasley joke shop in Diagon Alley, Ryan and Harry met. After taking a group of magic props from the second floor to arm themselves, they took the subway to a desolate side street. There are only a few tattered offices, a bistro, and a dump truck that is almost full. The only dazzling thing is a tattered red phone booth on the street. It's here. We're here. Harry pointed out the entrance to the Ministry of Magic guests. Ryan looked at his wristwatch and found that it was 8:30 in the evening. Sure enough, when they took the elevator from the red phone booth with a badge on their chest and entered the Ministry of Magic, there was no one in the hall. There is no imaginary security officer. This is not right. The Ministry of Magic should have staff on duty even at night. Ryan muttered. Guys, I think we better prepare the wand. Everyone should try to pay attention to the surroundings. The others nodded, and as soon as the elevator stopped, 7 people ran at full speed in the hall with their wands, and the clutter of footsteps echoed in the hall. In addition, the only sound that can be heard in the main hall is the constant blast of water in the golden fountain. The water flows from the Witch of the Wizard and the Wizard, the arrow of the Horseman, the tip of the fairy hat and the ear of the house elf. The ground spouted and landed in a circular pool. I can feel that Sirius is still alive. After rushing into the elevator, Harry felt the scar hurt again, but at the same time also got the current situation of Sirius. With pain, he poked the number 9 button, and the fence slammed shut. The elevator made a rattling sound, which was very harsh, but no one came out to check the situation. When the elevator stopped, the voice of the indifferent woman said, "The Department of Mystery." The fence opened, and they came out into the corridor, except for the nearest torch flickering in the airflow stirred by the elevator. There was no movement. Harry turned to the plain black door. For months, he has only seen it in his dreams, and now he is finally here. "It's here," he whispered, leading everyone along the corridor, and the remaining 6 people followed him while watching the surroundings with vigilance. "I think we should pay attention to what the 2 people are doing outside." Standing in front of the door, Harry suddenly said to the others, "Don't be stupid." Ryan stared at Harry. The mysterious man and his running dog should be ambushing somewhere here now. "We are scattered for no other purpose than to allow them to break each of us." www.mtlnovel.com. Okay. Harry wanted to keep several people away from the battlefield, But after listening to Ryan's words, he realized that now everyone had no choice. He turned to the black door and walked over. Just like in a dream, it opened. He crossed the threshold, followed by others. They are standing in a huge round room. Everything here, including the ceiling and the floor, is black. The surrounding walls are evenly embedded with identical, unmarked and handleless black doors, and some candles with blue flames dot the wall. Cold, the faint, gleaming candlelight is reflected on the shiny marble floor, making the floor look like calm and deep water. Walked to the end, Ryan closed the door, and the mechanism in the room was activated. With a rumbling noise, the candle began to move sideways. The round wall rotates. For a few seconds, the walls spun quickly, and the blue flames blurred around them, forming a blue band of light. Then, as suddenly as it started, the rumble stopped and everything was calm again. In Harry's dream, he always walked across the room without hesitation, straight to the door directly opposite the entrance, and then went on. But here is different from the dream. There are actually 12 doors. It is likely that this is a security measure, and enough time is spent to confuse the intruder's judgment. But it was a difficult obstacle for Harry, who needed to save people. "I think we should try these doors," he hurriedly said. "When I see the house, I know how to go." Come on. Chapter 437, Mystery Department. Ryan and 6 others stood at the entrance of the Mystery Division of the Ministry of Magic, but the first level of 12 doors made them difficult to stay here. In this case, each trial proposed by Harry is the only feasible plan. "Harry, what does that door look like?" Ginny asked. "It can only be said that it looks like a glowing room," Harry said as he walked to the door opposite him, and with his right hand clenched the wand, his left hand pushed hard. This door was opened easily, without the imaginary attack. After experiencing the darkness of the first room, everyone felt that this square room with golden chains and the many chandeliers was very bright. The house was empty, except for a table that might be used for recording. Only the center of the house had a huge glass water tank filled with dark green liquid. This water tank is more a transparent glass swimming pool than a water tank. Many white things are swimming in the liquid of Jasmine brain, and it's the human brain. Hermione, whose parent is a dentist, quickly recognized what was in the water tank. "Why are these things raised here?" "Just like the scientists outside study the brain, the wizards should also hope to discover our own secrets by studying the brain. The only difference is that magic keeps these brains alive, making it easier to study. As for the appearance here, it's easy to explain. Isn't the brain research department outside also concentrated in those top scientific institutions?" Lane explained to Hermione hourly, but everyone in the room heard him. "Everyone leaves here," Harry said after looking at his brain like a sticky cauliflower. "This is not. Let's try another door." They quickly returned to the black hallway. Before the door was closed, Ryan tapped the door lightly with a ring, leaving a silver flame sign on the door. The door closed with a click, and then there was another huge rumble, and the wall began to rotate rapidly again. But this time, a small cloud of silvery white appeared in the middle of a piece of blue. When everything was fixed, the silver flame mark was still jumping there, showing that they had tried the door. "This method is good," Harry said, holding his wand and pushing the door opposite him again. The others still followed. "This room may be larger than the one just now, and it is also rectangular." In the dim light they found that the middle of the house was sunken, forming a huge stone pit about 20 feet deep. The room was surrounded by a stone stepped down by a large pit like a stone bench. They stand in the top row, and the steps extend downward at a steep angle, much like a gym. There is a raised stone platform in the middle of the stone pit. An arch is standing above it. It looks very old and dilapidated, but there is no wall support around it. There was a tattered black curtain or drapery hanging over the arch. Although there was no breeze in the cold air, the drapery was floating gently as if it had just been touched by someone. Is this the intersection of the main world and the death world? As soon as Ryan entered the house, he could feel a bit of cold air slowly oozing out of the door with the rules of death. As someone who has been studying various rules recently, this kind of breath is very obvious. The opposite of the door should be the world of death corresponding to the Emerald Dream. He suddenly remembered the information he had seen before. Legend has it that this door was the first building of the Ministry of Magic. To be precise, the construction of the Ministry of Magic is actually taking this arch as the core and slowly expanding to the periphery. At the earliest time, this place was just a group of wizards studying the most secret knowledge of the magic world in this special environment, and then it gradually became the Department of Mystery Affairs. Today, they are only nominally affiliated with the Ministry of Magic, but in fact everything is operating independently. Lane deeply doubts that there is no one here today, because those in the Department of Mystery Affairs may have seen what is going to happen through the prophecy in advance, so they avoided the chaos of today in advance. If Ryan was still thinking about today's business, he even had the urge to just sit here and study it. Ryan felt that if he could study the rules where these two world rules conflict, the progress is estimated to be several times that of other places. "Who is there?" Harry said suddenly and jumped to the stone bench of the next level. But no one answered, but the curtain was still fluttering. Ryan immediately rushed forward and pulled him back. "Sirius cannot be the The death of the door is behind. This house was used by the Ministry of Magic as a death penalty room until the agreement was signed with the Dementors. Before signing the agreement, the death row will be taken from here. Push inside the door. Through the curtain, people will disappear from our world completely, and no one can come back alive from behind the door. But I heard a voice in it that attracted me. Harry finished looking back at the others, but everyone else signaled that he didn't hear anything. Only when someone close to you dies can you hear the sound inside. Only you hear match this. Ryan twisted Harry's upper body hard, and then let him face him. He stared at Harry's confused eyes. I know this door is very attractive to you because you have lost your loved ones. But please think about what we are here for. Damn. Harry gave himself a slap in the face and woke him up. He thought that Sirius had been caught by Voldemort and might be tortured, facing danger to his life, but he was looking at the door. Let's go. Under Harry's leadership, they returned to the black circular room. Lion also printed a silver flame logo on it. The wall flew again, and then stopped. Harry picked a door indiscriminately and walked over and pushed it, but the door didn't move. Lion touched the door and let dozens of bright red runes flow onto the door, but these runes were pushed back by the power of the door. At this time, he discovered that the door used to lock the door was actually an extremely complicated magical power. www.mplnovel.com could not be opened, but I think it should not be this door. Harry could go through all the doors in his dream. After marking, the wall turned again and stopped. Harry was already desperate at this time. He repeated the previous process again. But after opening the door this time, Harry's expression suddenly became excited. This is it, Harry said excitedly, and rushed in after the first one. Others can only keep up. I just don't know what was waiting in front of me this time. Lane sighed softly, and walked into the room last. This house is the brightest one you have ever seen since entering the Ministry of Magic. There was a continuous and busy ticking sound like 4,000 feet walking. Looking around, all kinds of clocks are hanging in the gaps between the bookshelves, or placed on the desks that are as long as the room. The surface of the clock is shining brightly, and the most dazzling is beating like diamonds. Shining is a tall bell-shaped crystal cover at the end of the room. Under Harry's leadership, everyone quickly walked through the narrow gap between the tables, walked through the bell-shaped crystal cover, and came to the only door behind. I think we are here. He turned his head and looked at everyone, and found that everyone was nervous and took out his wand. Ryan and Hermione even held a strange golden glass bottle in their left hands. Okay, let's go in. Harry wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say in his head, and finally waved his hand to signal everyone's advance. Chapter 438, Prophecy Ball. After entering this house, Lane found that this place is very similar to the Prophecy Hall in the movie. The room is as tall as the church, and it is lined with soaring shelves filled with grey glass balls. Below each glass ball is a yellowed label. Nothing else. The light source of the room comes from the candles embedded in the candlesticks on the shelf at certain intervals. Like the black rotunda, the candles here also emit blue light. Coupled with the quietness that is very different from the house outside, it makes people feel that this house is as cold as the snowy field. Harry took the lead and ran to the right along the silver numbers under these candlesticks, because he remembered that the position in the dream was in row 97. Ryan, who was at the end at this time, placed the box in the ground under Hermione's cover, half-kneeled, and then opened the box. There are 8 jewels on the box. Each time you press a jewel, the corresponding puppet will be released. After dozens of seconds, the 8 puppets stood in front of Ryan collectively. This time the target is much stronger than the last vampire, so you better do it together. If you are not sure, I would rather let it go and don't force it. In short, this concealment first. Only if you can be sure that the blow is fatal you are allowed to take action only when you see it. When you see the mysterious man or Dumbledore appear, you will leave here immediately, and then Rose Crystal will open the door for you and return to your world. Understood? The puppets all agreed, and then lined up a skirt ceremony. Then he flew up to the shelf and disappeared. We need to run faster, otherwise we can't keep up with Harry, Hermione said quickly as the puppets gradually disappeared into the darkness at the top of the house. When they reached the 97th row, they just heard Harry shouting loudly, God, who can save him? He is all covered with blood. Ryan quickly pushed away the Weasley twins in front of him and found Harry sitting on his knees while Sirius was lying in front of him with blood and pale complexion. He doesn't matter. Ryan used his wand to release a trace of green light and sprinkled it on Sirius for inspection, and said to Harry after sensing the feedback from the magic, I got 3 or 4 drill spells, and I was a little hurt, but these are all recoverable. I tried to wake him up first, but now he is weak. Even if he wakes up, he might need someone to take him with him. Go. After hearing this, Harry's complexion was much better. The discovery that Ryan did not say is that through his inspection, he can be sure that the body and soul lying here are all serious and have not been dropped by anyone. This is better than the worst state in imagination. But Ryan can understand what this is all about. As the second-generation Dark Lord, Voldemort always has such a pride and arrogance. He does not think that a few minor wizards can escape from him and his Death Eaters with an adult wizard who basically loses his self-care ability. Well, like disguise, Sneak attack is a disregard for him. On the other hand, this small Sirius that can't be recovered in a short time can be used to slow down their steps and increase the chances of Voldemort's side. If a counterfeit person is found, one hit will make Harry find that Sirius is fake and run directly O number. After all, Harry is just a student, and running away from a brutal guy like Death Eater is the most natural choice. Harry had successfully escaped from Voldemort's hands twice before, so Voldemort's preparation for this time was also conceivable. Think of a large group of Death Eaters now ambushing around. Ryan could not help but looked around. But he saw nothing but darkness. Since the ambush has not come out, it is important to wake up Sirius first. After waking up, everyone can at least know what happened here. Recovery of life. Ryan pointed a Kenya spell with Siren's wand at Sirius, and a mixed red and green light flew from Len's wand and sprinkled on Sirius. The light was quickly absorbed into Sirius's skin. Under the moisturization of these magical forces full of nature and life, his skin began to recover some blood color slowly, and all the wounds on his body healed. Finally, Sirius's eyelids began to tremble slightly, and then slowly opened his eyes. "Sirius, you are awake," Harry said excitedly, with a smile on his face. Sirius' eyeball first turned, as if looking for something. Then he narrowed his eyes and looked at Harry, a nervous expression on his face. Lips wriggled hard, as if to say something to Harry. Harry bent down and put his ear close to Sirius's mouth. He was heard in a hoarse and weak voice. "Why are you here? Hurry, leave here quickly, this is a trap." "What? Trap?" Harry raised his head in amazement, and found that 20 shadows appeared around them in an instant, blocking the way between them. The eyes of these people shone in the gaps of the hood. More than 20 shiny ones pointed at their hearts. "Okay, Harry, take the glass ball with your name on the shelf next to you and hand it to me. Otherwise you and your friends, yes, and your godfather, will die here together." There was a deliberately lowered voice in the shadow under a hood, but Ryan heard that it was Lucius Malfoy. Harry guesses that each crystal ball here may correspond to a corresponding person, and only the designated person can remove these glass from the shelf. In this way, the purpose of being lured by Voldemort's group is clear. This crystal ball is probably the secret weapon that Voldemort was looking for to defeat them. Is clear, but now Harry has no choice. With Sirius, they seem unable to highlight the Death Eater's encirclement, and he certainly will not leave Sirius. Harry could only look at the Death Eaters hidden under the hood with a stubborn look, perhaps out of some scruples. The Death Eaters just pointed at them with a magic wand, but did nothing. But he also knew that this stalemate didn't make much sense. If he does not respond within a short period of time, these Death Eaters may exhaust themselves by other means once their patience is exhausted. At that time, more people may be injured. Just when he was anxious, www.mtlnovel.com suddenly, with the afterglow of the corner of his eyes, he saw Ryan half kneeling next to Sirius with the help of several classmates to cover what medicine was poured into Sirius' mouth. When he noticed that Harry was looking at him, he made a delaying mouth. Harry realized that Ryan, the master of alchemy, was likely to have a drug to treat Sirius in a short time, and he now hopes that he will have enough time to let Sirius recover. In this way, in any case better than the current situation. "Do you want this glass ball?" Harry asked. Several Death Eaters laughed. Among the dark figures on Harry's left, a piercing woman's voice said triumphantly, "The Dark Lord is always expecting things. So you hurry and follow our instructions, do it, or I'll be glad you gave me a chance to torture pureblood scum and mud species." Harry walked helplessly towards the row of shelves, and heard Lucius Malfoy say in the back, "Yes, in the row that is flush with your eyes. You can see it in the note under the glass ball, your name and the name of the great Dark Lord." Harry saw the glass ball with the names of himself and Voldemort, and a date 16 years ago. He hesitated for a while and tried to control him, and he got rid of it. So he held the dirty ball. He thought it was cold, but on the contrary, it made people feel as if it had been in the sun for several hours, as if warmed by its own light. Quite easily, he took the glass ball off the shelf. "Hand over the prophecy ball. There is no need to hurt people," Big Malfoy said coldly. Chapter 439, Scuffle. Harry laughed. "I'll hand it over to you so that you can kill us? Unless I can get us out of here, I'll throw this thing away. Your master will definitely not be happy to see this scene." He was talking nervously while talking, and he was delaying time by saying all kinds of obscenities. At the same time, from time to time looking at the direction of Sirius. Suddenly he saw Sirius clenched his hands into fists, and then Ryan put a wand in his hand. At the same time Ryan and his weak margin nodded to Harry. Harry felt relieved at once, even if Sirius could not fight, but as long as he could move. "Hurry up and predict the ball for me, otherwise we will use the magic wand." Seeing Harry seemed to be dragging his time, the big Malfoy worried about the long night and threatened with raising his wand. "Okay, then come on," Harry said as he raised his wand to his chest, and the others did the same. "Do you really dare to disregard your master's orders?" Harry said as he lifted the glass ball to fall. At this time, the female Death Eater screamed. The ball prophesied, "Disarm the weapon." A wand of red light was released from one's wand and interrupted the female Death Eater's magic, forcing her to interrupt the flying spell. Harry took the opportunity to catch the prophecy ball that had flown to his fingertips again. "Dirty mud seed, Did you dare to do it to me? She said, her furious eyes staring at Ryan fiercely in the gap of the hood. Very well, then, enough. Big Malfoy shouted at the witch. In case you broke it, I just want to teach a mud-like species. Harry had discovered at this time that the target of the Death Eaters was the glass ball in his hand, but no matter what it was, Harry looked far worse than the godfathers and friends. He just wanted to take everyone out alive and draw a happy ending to today's rescue operation, rather than letting friends die for themselves. If I break it, I guess Voldemort will be very angry. Watching friends pull hands as if passing something, Harry knew that he should try to create confusion at this time to create opportunities for friends. I really don't know why you guys choose such a grumpy boss. Shut up. The female Death Eater put down her hood. Bellatrix's distorted face appeared in everyone's eyes. She screamed sharply, how dare you say his name from your humble mouth? How dare you defile it with your hybrid tongue? You how dare? Humble? Voldemort is still half-breed. Why don't you say he's a humble man? Harry said as quietly as possible, but the more ironic, the more ironic, the more able to stir up some Death Eater emotion. At this moment, he felt that Ginny, who was standing behind, pulled his clothes corner and drew something with his fingers behind his back. He tried to distinguish, and it turned out that Ginny had painted the word OK behind him. I feign no. Close your eyes. From Bella, Malfoy, and Ryan shouted a word at once. Harry, who was ready in advance, closed his eyes immediately. But even in this way, he felt his surroundings suddenly light up through his eyelids, as if he were watching the sun with his eyes closed at noon, and then heard a scream from the side. Harry immediately bent down. After avoiding several enchanted spells, he opened his eyes. Seeing Ryan and Hermione lying with a Death Eater at their feet, the two of them fired magic at the Death Eaters and waved to let everyone evacuate from this place. Harry saw one of Weasley's twins staggering at the pace of Sirius running forward. Go, go! Hermione shouted at Harry as he watched Harry staring at himself. At this time, Ryan was putting up a shield like a white glowing mist to block the magic that the reacting Death Eaters fired on everyone. Under the shimmer of light on the shield, Harry saw Ryan's face not looking good. What about you? Harry asked. You go first. We are the strongest, so give you a little time. The faster you run, the sooner we will be able to withdraw, Hermione said to a Death Eater who tried to rush up. With strange red light magic, Harry knew that this time was not a waste of time, so he immediately rushed out of the gap in the enclosure that he had withdrawn from and ran to the entrance quickly. As he ran past the Death Eater on the ground, he glimpsed a pool of blood under the Death Eater. This is also the masterpiece of Ryan and Hermione. After splitting the crystal of sunlight into everyone's hands and crushing them at the same time, the moment everyone subconsciously closed their eyes. At the same time, they took out their swords and progressed their thrusts toward the impression of the nearest Death Eater. The closest to them was a tall and strong guy who seemed to lack sufficient practical experience. After being suddenly attacked, he lacked the ability to respond to random changes, but stayed silly. When the sword tip is close to the opponent's skin, you can feel that something is blocking it a little bit. This should be the defensive magic props owned by many pureblood families. However, the magic props on his body were obviously inadequate, and the defense formed on his body shattered instantly under the impact of two magic swords. So the two men stabbed the swords smoothly into each other's throat and heart. Before pulling out the sword, they twisted it habitually. Go. After more than 20 seconds, looking at the Death Eaters who were trying to wrap up the left and right, Ryan and Hermione immediately took out a few black hole-like things from their pockets and threw them out. This is the Peruvian stealth smoke bomb that I used to take at the joke shop. Their effect is very good. The dark smoke enveloped the surroundings. The Death Eaters couldn't disperse these smokes in a hurry. Washed away. However, without seeing the road, several Death Eaters stumbled to the ground by the portable swamp that Hermione and Lane set up on the road. Damn muddy species, I'm going to peel your skin. As Ryan and Hermione ran, they heard Bella's angry shouts coming from behind. Besides, there was a small mumble. Ryan could feel the rose crystals. They used the black mist to cover their hands and killed a single Death Eater with their shot. Just kill these Death Eaters in this house as much as possible. When everyone leaves the house, you will immediately retreat with the corpse. Lane gave instructions to the puppets through the soul chain while running towards the door. It's still that sentence. Hide yourself and kill the enemy with one blow. Understood? The puppets answered in unison. Soon they saw a door directly in front of them. They came in from here. When the two of them rushed out of the door slammed shut, and one of the twins pointed at the closed door with a wand and said, "Hurry up." "You are simply too risky," Sirius said weakly against the wall. Ryan's potion allowed him to temporarily recover his ability to move, but the damage left by Voldemort was still too deep. He is now at most similar to the weakest Ginny here. We have to leave here. www.mplnovel.com. I heard before that most of the rooms in the Department of Mystery have many doors connected. It is not very safe here. They will soon find other ways to come over. We are now retreat to the lobby quickly so that we can find someone to support us. Sirius is also a veteran, so he immediately arranged the next move in the shortest language. After approving Harry's sentence, but when they just ran to the door leading to the round black hall, the door slammed open, and two Death Eaters wearing black hoods came in. I found them. They are still Before the words were finished, the two Death Eaters were set on fire and stunned. But the news has been spread. The door was just blocked by magic. The door was blown open. Several Death Eaters swarmed insanely, and launched magic spells around to knock down the closet on the wall, and then let the things inside shattered. Strangely, the closet quickly returned to the wall, repeating the process of being destroyed again. It was at this time that Ryan saw a small pile of golden sand near him, as if an hourglass had broken there before. He unconsciously reached out the hand with the magic ring, and the grains of sand flew into the gem inlaid on the ring. Although this matter is very strange, but at this time Ryan can't tolerate more pondering. He stood up and retreated into the black rotunda with everyone. After the door of the time hall closed, the surrounding walls began to turn again. It's just that when the wall stopped rotating this time, everyone found that the silver flame mark left before had completely disappeared. "Should I do this?" Ginny shouted with a cry. Chapter 440, Under Scuffle. "Anyone will do," Sirius shouted, but before they could act, they saw a Death Eater violently open a door and rush out. Fallen. The Death Eater was immediately stunned by the big guy, and Sirius rushed into the door behind him with a single arrow. "Not here!" Sirius shouted loudly. "There is only one tank of brains." Many Death Eaters rushed in through the doors on both sides of the brain hall, at the moment of a great deal. One of Fred or George pulled Sirius back, then slammed the door shut, and the wall spun again. The rotation stopped again. As a result, several doors opened at the same time, and Death Eaters rushed out of each door. During the dogfight, someone released Peru's stealth smoke bomb again, and as a result everyone was dispersed. When Ryan darted through a few doors and rushed into a small office with the light of a dense spell, he found that only Hermione had been following him. "Can't you only open one door at a time?" "What happened just now?" Hermione asked breathlessly. "We were almost blocked in the hall by the group of Death Eaters." August Lookwood, he was a silent man who turned to Voldemort. Maybe he had a way to change something here. Lane recalled the introduction of the jailbreaking Death Eaters in the previous Prophet Daily say. "Damn, I hope everyone will be okay. I just saw Fred and George rushing into the other door." The others didn't know where to go. Suddenly the office door was knocked open, and a Death Eater rushed in. "Look what I found. 2 stinky little mud species." The spell was not spoken yet. Hermione's hand in the ring suddenly took hold, and the shadow behind the Death Eater immediately stood up to take the food. The dead were fixed at the door. Just as he struggled to escape from the shadow, a ball with blue and white light hit his face, and then he knew nothing in front of him. "Let's go to meet them with Harry." The two crossed the floor of the Death Eater corpse whose head was knocked out by Ryan with a thunderbolt and rushed out of the office, and then just saw Harry holding the prophecy ball not far away. The place ran across, looking like he wanted to draw the Death Eaters away from his friends. Only Ginny was following him now, and even Sirius didn't know where to go. Now Harry and Ginny are chasing 5 Death Eaters behind them. Fortunately, they are afraid of damaging the prophecy ball, and they dare not cast a spell on Harry. Ryan and Hermione immediately followed after seeing it, firing magic to the Death Eaters chasing behind them and asking, "Did you see anyone else?" "It's so good that you two are okay," and fainted. After a coma spell on a chasing Death Eater, Ginny said to Ryan and Hermione, "Sirius and George dragged together for 5 years. Each Death Eater, Ron and Fred were injured and comatose." Just said that they rushed through an open door, and after running a few steps, Ryan felt that his feet were empty, and then the whole person fell. Fortunately, when they were about to touch the ground, a gentle force stopped them, and then slowly landed on a table. Ryan stood up and scanned the surroundings, and found that this was the platform with the arch. Unfortunately, they are now surrounded. The 5 Death Eaters who followed them were standing on the top of the surrounding steps and approaching them step by step. At the same time, more Death Eaters emerged from the other doors and began to jump down the first-level stone bench towards them. Ryan at this time they could only raise their wands against the stone arches, while the Death Eaters stopped on the 2 or 3 stone steps from the bottom. "Potter, you're done," Lucius Malfoy said slowly and pulled off the mask. "Now give me the ball of prophecy like a good boy." Let them go. I will give it to you," Harry said desperately. "Don't you count?" Malfoy said slowly. "You only have 4 people, we have 12. Drill the heart." Bella suddenly released the heart curse at Ryan, and then smiled nervously. "If you don't want your mud friend to die in pain, give me that glass ball." Watching Ryan kneeling down on the ground with her head down deeply and Hermione holding Ryan nervously, then look at the sweaty hands holding her hands but looking at the gold of the Death Eaters. Finally, think about the godfather Sirius and the boys of the Weasley family, whose life and death are unknown. Harry felt he had no choice. He stretched out the hand holding the prophecy ball, and Malfoy tried to jump up the stairs to take the prophecy ball. Just then the upper door suddenly opened again, and 6 people rushed into the house quickly. Arthur Weasley, Lupin, Moody, Tonks, Professor McGonagall and Kingsley. Seeing the Death Eaters, they immediately attacked the surrounding Phoenix members with their wands, and the members of the Phoenix Society continued to fight back against the Death Eaters. Various seemingly powerful magic spells quickly filled this small space. Bella had just escaped Arthur Weasley's move to the Golden Curse to sarcasm, but suddenly found that her 2 feet were sticking to the ground. blocking a Lupin's magic. She looked down and saw some black smoke haunted her feet. At this moment she suddenly heard a crackling sound close to her. She looked around and saw that the brown-haired mud girl was spreading her 5 fingers at her, and another boy she had just cast a heart curse came out. As expected, she calmly pointed at her with her wand. The head of the wand was condensed with a bit of blue light, and there were countless small hairs of electric current trapped around it. Those voices came from above. After eating a heart-shaping curse just now, Ryan was not as painful as he was. Because the heart damage curse about the damage on the soul can't break through the defense of the runes in his mind www.mtlnovel.com, and the physical damage is also for Ryan, who has repeatedly refined the flesh and experienced a lot of war not so powerful. He did that just to reduce the attention of Death Eaters in order to prepare a large alchemy to create chaos for everyone to escape together. And when Hermione came to hug herself, Ryan just told Hermione to let her cooperate. But what I didn't expect was that the Phoenix Society arrived as scheduled at this time, and Ryan immediately changed their goal and chose Bella, who was closest to them, as the target. While Bella and Mr. Weasley were fighting, Hermione bound Bella's feet with a shadow, and then Ryan prepared a powerful punishment whip. In order to avoid being discovered in advance, Ryan and Hermione did not dare to take too much action. So when Ryan launched his magic, he just waved his wand in the general direction of the previous memory. The bright spot on the wand's head immediately turned into a blue and white whip and flew over to directly wrap Bella's calf. Damn, a little deviation, Ryan thought, but this time he couldn't allow it to come again. He pulled the hand holding the wand hard back, and the plasma whip quickly cut through the clothes, skin, muscles and bones. After a wailing cry, Bella's legs broke on her knees. But when Hermione used the shadow to cut into Bella's neck, Bella, who was a veteran, swallowed the side with pain and evaded the attack, then climbed behind a stone pier and disappeared. Fortune telling her, Ryan whispered in disbelief, and then joined Hermione side by side against the arch to join the scuffle. Chapter 441. Block the door. During the death of the Ministry of Magic, the Death Eaters and the members of the Order of the Phoenix broke out into a fierce battle centered on the arch. When Ryan and Hermione teamed up and stunned a Death Eater, they saw Dolohov fired a death curse at them, and the two had to rush to the side to avoid the curse. As they were about to fight back, a long snake made of flames rushed from the side and drove Dolohov up at least 5 feet high. Professor McGonagall. Ryan and Hermione turned their heads and saw that it was McGonagall, who combed Dolohov's hair neatly and straightened his lips. She was now staring solemnly at Dolohov, who had risen from the ground to fight back. Professor McGonagall is really amazing. Hermione released a coma spell to Dolohov, while manipulating the shadows at the feet of nearby Death Eaters to interfere with their actions. Ryan attacked Dolohov together with Hermione, and at the same time said, "The wizards who can teach at Hogwarts are very powerful, not to mention our dean." Dolohov was quickly stunned under the impact of 3 people. Professor McGonagall saw Dolohov falling down and quickly ran to the place where Lupin was fighting, and they yelled to Ryan at the same time. "You are a little further away from the battlefield, and it is not yet my student's turn to go to the battlefield." At this time, Ryan saw a Death Eater rushing to a fallen wizard. He immediately hit the Death Eater with an obstacle spell, and then he and Hermione covered each other and rushed to the fallen wizard. Around was knocked to the ground by Moody. His grey hair was wet with blood and stuck to his forehead. The devil's eye had fallen out of his eye socket, spinning on the ground. Ryan rushed into Moody's front to fight the masked Death Eater, while Hermione bowed and grabbed the collar behind Moody's neck. With the help of the shadow, he was directed towards the obstacle drag. At this time, a purple-haired Tunks ran from the side and directly stunned the Death Eater, who was fully absorbed in the battle with Ryan. "Thanks," Ryan shouted to Tunks. Tunks just nodded quickly and ran to fellow Kingsley to help him against the 3 Death Eaters on the opposite side. "Hermione, how is Moody?" Ryan asked as he turned a large rock. "It should be a black magic that can be coma. I have treated the wound on his head with white fresh fragrance, and then you have to look at you," Hermione said, half-kneeled, holding her magic wand and watching warily around. Ryan walked to Moody's side and tried to wake him with natural magic. I was just now." Moody opened his eyes and looked at Ryan, who was treating him, and the nearby Hermione alerting him. "Ryan, you have done a great job, but I suggest that you stay here now, and Dumbledore will come over later." After talking about it, Moody turned the fake eyeball into his eye socket and turned it out of the back of the stone. He leaned against the row of stone steps to avoid a green life-spelling curse. Death Eater. Since several people did not allow them to participate in the war, Ryan and Hermione simply hid behind the stone from time to time to look at the situation, while using shadow magic to create obstacles for the Death Eaters. This works very well, and there are already several Death Eaters who have to choose hardwired magic when unable to dodge. Taking advantage of this gap, Ryan saw Harry and Ginny dodge Lucius Malfoy around the arched stone platform. Fearing to smash the prophecy ball, Malfoy dared not attack Harry, so he poured all the spells on Ginny, and Ginny dodged right and left looking very thrilled. "Don't allow me to move my child." The Mr. Weasley, who had just repulsed the opposite Death Eater, saw his eyes split and his red hair was on fire. He rushed to the edge of the stone platform with a single arrow and fought against Malfoy, shouting at Harry while avoiding a spell. "Run!" The children ran fast. but this is that they can no longer run. From the door above, nearly 10 Death Eaters came out one after another. With the Death Eaters on the field, they stepped down the Phoenix and Ryan on the arched platform. "You don't think that the Great Dark Lord is not prepared, just come with such a few people?" Looking at reinforcements, a hoarse voice came from under the mask of a Death Eater. Ryan felt that this was probably because he had learned his lesson after being pitted in the last Voldemort resurrection ceremony, so this time he prepared enough backhand. "Tunks, you are the youngest, you take the children first," Moody said to Harry at the center of the Phoenix Society at this time. "Well," Tunks nodded, but Lane could feel she was crying. She knew that other people had made a decision and was prepared to cover them at any cost. "Dad." Ginny, with a wound on his face, looked at Mr. Weasley, who was nervously holding his wand to the Death Eaters outside. "Ginny, you followed Tunks and they rushed out, and I will soon catch up with you. None of you want to leave." Bella suddenly appeared from a certain step, and the wound appeared to have stopped bleeding. Leaning on a wooden board where magic turned out to float. "Since you can't complete the task of Lord Dark Lord, you are all dead," said that. She launched a life-spelling spell and directly hit a pattern on the arch. After that pattern was hit, it began to emit green light, and then began to spread to the entire arch pattern. "That lunatic," a Death Eater said in a nearly moaning voice. "I clearly told them the taboo here before the action." She actually took the initiative. Finally he ran to the exit, and even Hood fell to the ground when he ran away. Ryan recognized him as the former Silent Man August Woodward. Because Ryan was protected behind the members of the Order of the Phoenix at this time, it was the person closest to the arch. He immediately felt that something was awful to them in the arch behind him. Lean turned around, and clearly felt that a force of death was about to rush out of the arch. At the same time, this force also affected the surrounding environment, making Harry and the members of the Phoenix standing on the stage unable to walk. Harry and the members of the Order of the Phoenix tried to break away from this high platform, but even with all their strength, they still couldn't move a step. Lean lowered his head at this time, only to find that a large number of green glowing lines were also written on the stone platform under his feet. At the same time, these lines are spreading rapidly around. Some Death Eaters who are running slowly are also fixed on the ground like the members of the Phoenix after these lines reach their feet. "Looks like hell." Ryan thought of raising his wand high with a hand wearing the ring, and then desperately pouring magic power into the ring to cooperate with the knowledge gained from the previous rule research to activate the unending fire. From the arch, he could see that several tentacles of fog behind the curtain were about to reach out. If you look closely at www.mplnovel.com, you can find that the tentacles are made of countless twisted human bodies. "You don't want to pass," Ryan shouted in Kenya loudly. "I am the master of the indestructible flame, and the power of death that is not part of the living world cannot knock me down." After calling, Ryan slammed his wand forward, and most of the wooden wand sank into the stone arch, where the transparent barrier hung. A mist of white light emerged from the head of the wand, forming a thin wall of fog that sealed the entire arch. "As soon as you can move, you go. I won't be able to support it for long," Ryan shouted to Harry, who looked at him with surprised eyes. At this time, the green lines on the ground no longer spread, but began to fade toward the arch. It may have absorbed the spreading power, and those tentacles continually beat the fog wall, making a thunderous sound. Ryan soon felt the pressure increase, and the facial features began to bleed. It didn't take long for Ryan to think that he might not be able to support it, but at this time the lines on the stone platform had not faded. Just about to fall short, Ryan felt an arm stretched out to hold the hand that he held his wand, and then another force of the same indestructible fire passed along the arm to Ryan. "This is Hermione." There was so little fire in the ring that Ryan sent her before. In the case of Ryan's full efforts to urge the indestructible fire in the ring, the same indestructible fire in the ring in Hermione's hand also responded, and she immediately made an extreme danger to herself after discovering this. With the help of Hermione, the barrier finally reached the moment when the lines on the stone platform disappeared. Moody took the opportunity to take everyone out. Chapter 442, The Other Side of the Curtain. "What about Ryan and Hermione?" Harry shouted while struggling while being pulled away by Lupin. "They are still on the table." As Harry yelled, the tentacles composed of countless human bodies slapped against the misty barrier again with the breath of death. Harry saw Ryan and Hermione spit out blood at the same time. "I'm going to save." Before he finished speaking, Harry was stunned by a spell by Lupin, and then quickly walked out. As they have experienced a brutal war, they know that this time is not the time for their children to love. At this time, if they return to remove more dead people, let Ryan have no purpose other than in vain. When the members of the Order of the Phoenix left, everyone passing by Ryan and Hermione nodded quickly, even if they were like Professor McGonagall. It feels like the body is farewell, all face to face. As all the members of the Order of the Phoenix climbed up the stairs, Ryan turned his head and said to Hermione beside him, while a smile appeared on his face, but in him the blood on his face made me feel inexplicably crying. "I think it may be because they felt they forgot to bring another bunch of white lilies," Hermione replied in a whisper and pursed her lips when she finished. Although Ryan greeted most of the impacts just now, those aftermaths still caused considerable damage to Hermione. Now her face was pale and she didn't look any better than Ryan. After everyone's safety has disappeared at the entrance to the top of the steps, Lane is ready to use the emergency exit function of the 1G grocery store to take Hermione to run. As a person who likes to prepare in advance, Lane will not fight unprepared battles. Now is the time to use prepared methods to escape danger. But just as Ryan was about to launch, the waves of death that had beaten on the barrier like waves before disappeared, as if they had never appeared. At the same time, the power imprisoning his wand also disappeared, allowing Ryan to easily withdraw his wand. This is Ryan hadn't reacted yet, and suddenly a huge suction came from the stone arch to directly Ryan and Hermione outside the door. As soon as he was pulled into the arch by this suction, his heart sank, and a strong unwillingness came out of his heart. Although Ryan died once, this kind of thing will not get used to it anyway. What made him even more frustrated was that this time he was not only dead, but also involved the people who were very important to him to die together. There is nothing terrible about death. I may be able to return to the original world with luck. Ryan cheered himself up. It was so dangerous to Hermione that she didn't have to come. But he soon realized that he shouldn't have these thoughts if he hung up. Ryan, who had closed her eyes and was about to wait for death, opened her eyes violently, and saw 2 rings of white flames emanating from her and Hermione's hands, which spread from their hands to their entire body. Protect 2 people strictly. Just when he turned his gaze to Hermione, he found Hermione's eyes closed now, and he still muttered something in his mouth. Ryan thought of what this was, and the arch should represent the dead side of the world. The death rule can indeed kill all people who enter in an instant, but Ryan's ring was hidden by the power of the indestructible fire. Although the power is not very strong, the person is not low. The power of these deaths around can't penetrate the protection of the basic power of the creation of another world, even if they face the death power of the entire world here. But this little fire is enough for both Ryan and Hermione. Individuals provide perfect protection. Is surrounded by grey mist, and the 2 can only feel their continuous falling. Although the escape system can still be activated at this time, unless you will always live in another world in the future, otherwise you will return to this place once you return. Just after the pressure in the arch was reduced, you should choose to run the road decisively. Ryan thought with regret, but who would have thought that the arch would not only release the power of death outward, but also the outside in. Ryan, where is this? Are we dead? Just as Ryan was entangled, the voice of Hermione whispered into his ear. It should be dead, but it's not painful at all. Fortunately, it's not too bad to have Ryan around, and we have saved so many people. The only bad thing is that we all have only one child. If we die, what should parents do? The good news is that we are not dead yet. The bad news is that we are now trapped behind that arch, that is, the world of death is temporarily unable to get out. Listening to Hermione's incoherent nagging there, Ryan immediately said, interrupted her. Well, it's better to live now than anything else. Hermione opened her eyes and looked around. She was very optimistic. Is there any way for us to change this state now? For example, let us stop falling. I think I have a way. Under the calming tone of Hermione's calm tone, Ryan also calmed down. Initially, he wields his wand to release several magics, but these magics are distorted or even completely ineffective in this environment full of death and rules. After thinking for a while, he bit through his left hand and drew one after another runes in the air, and then used these runes to mobilize the unending fire in the ring and began to check the surrounding environment. Hermione first saw Ryan waving his wand, but only the head of the wand was simply lit a few times. But soon Ryan gave up his wand and directed some blood-red runes around him, and then the runes wrapped a layer of white flames on them and flew in all directions. But soon these runes flew back to form a grey flame full of death in the hands of the 2 clenched, and then Ryan kept chanting a certain spell at the grey flame. And every time he talked about it, the flame in his hand would shake violently once, and an invisible wave would spread suddenly. Hermione was surprised to find that as the energy fluctuated again and again, the surrounding mist seemed to be slowly solidifying. But Ryan didn't notice this at this time. As the fluctuations spread, he also received feedback from the surrounding fog and fell into a trance. Some voices that had never been heard before began to sound in his heart. No, I don't want to die, it's just a few small muds. What? Kill head, huge, knock, shattered, Master www.mplnovel.com. I'm sorry, I tried my best. I want to live. I have to live anyway. This is the Zepesh family. How could someone break in? Huh? Strange puppet. For the glory of the Zepesh family, rush up. Countless noisy voices passed into Ryan's soul, making him feel that his soul is getting stronger and stronger, as if he can master everything and know everything. Ryan. Just as Ryan's perception expanded rapidly outward, as if holding everything around him in his hand, he felt somebody vaguely calling his name, while shaking his body. Thoughts returned to the body like a tide, and Ryan burst into a cold sweat from the back. Just now I used life magic to try to communicate with the world around me. I didn't expect this world to be too powerful. Even if I had the protection of the indestructible fire, I was almost lost in the surrounding world of death. Fortunately, I had a soul contract with myself. Hermione's call from the bottom of her heart called Ryan's soul back. Is this? Opening his eyes, Ryan was shocked to find that he was lying on a floor covered with grey tiles. Hermione sat down on her knees, put her head on her knees, and stroked her face again, calling his name again and again. "You are awake." Hermione cheered happily when she saw Ryan open her eyes. "What happened?" With the help of Hermione, Ryan asked after sitting against her. Chapter 443, Grim Reaper. After being supported by Hermione, Ryan found that there was grey mist around him, and only he and Hermione were in no fog at the place where they were, as if a hemispherical protective cover enveloped the two of them. "Just now I saw you turned into a grey flame, and then the flame grew bigger and bigger under the influence of your spell. Then the grey flame disappeared and we appeared here." Hermione briefly introduced what happened just now, but she was also confused by this situation. "I think I probably know what's going on." After sitting for a while and feeling that he was recovering, Ryan helped Hermione stand up, then raised his hand with the ring and used the power of the ring to wrap around. The two of them took a lap. A grey mist similar to the surroundings emerged from the head of the wand and plunged into the ocean formed by the surrounding grey mist. As he cast magic, the surrounding mist suddenly faded a lot. Hermione was shocked to find that they were now in a misty hall with a hard iron grey ground. The little bit of floor tiles before is just a trivial part of this palace. Hermione took a light step forward and took 2 steps forward. From the touch of her feet, she could feel that the ground was very solid, just like a real stone. A glance around, a grey and black mist enveloped all the places she touched. Except for the palace where she was, she could not see anything other than mist, as if it were the kingdom of mist. "Where is this?" Hermione turned to look at Ryan, but Ryan couldn't figure out the situation at this time. He just tried to communicate with his surroundings using the magic of life and the death part of Mutation Taoism, and he received a response. It is the best proof that he is now in this hall. But he didn't see anything available for communication here, because Ryan couldn't find any objects to communicate with, such as the legendary wizards who lived in the world of death. In desperation, he could only probe into the surroundings, and found that everything around him was illusory. Only the floor under his feet was extremely solid. He knelt down on one knee and observed the ground through the faint mist. Hermione walked quietly to his side and stood there, watching her vigilantly. After opening the eyes of Yin and Yang, Ryan found that the grey tiles on the ground were not plain tiles that were previously imagined. There were only a few portraits drawn on each tile. Men's, women's, seniors, youngs, and even some non-humans, such as Ryan saw an image that was clearly a horse. Every portrait on the brick is very simple and even simple, but these portraits portray an extremely vivid feeling, just like having life. Has life? As soon as the thought came to mind, Ryan immediately thought of something. He reached out and touched a floor with horses. Moments after, a picture appeared in Ryan's mind. In a tall wooden house quacked to the ground, childhood learning to stand up on 4 legs. In his youth, he found a sweetheart and became a hunter in the tribe. The birth and growth of the child, and the tremendous blow on the soul caused by the lover's departure when the 2 temples are frosted, and accidentally caught the wind and cold caused the old horse to close his eyes forever in his house. These pictures passed through Ryan's mind very quickly, and it was too late to see the details. But he still knew the life of an old horseman, and figured out what these bricks represented. Soul, the soul of those who have died. Ryan thought about it and touched a few more bricks, and those bricks would also appear in the memory of Ryan's mind. Some of them died like old horses, some died of murder, some died of accidents, and some died of plague. But regardless of gender, age, race and death law, the only thing they have in common is that they are all dead. For coming to this mysterious place, Ryan will be very happy if he is. Usually, being able to get close to the rules of death in this way is actually very helpful for him to master the rules himself. But now, because Hermione is around, Lane just wants to go out quickly. Even if the indestructible fire can provide enough defense, the ubiquitous rules of death around it will still affect 2 living people. Indestructible fire did prevent the penetration of death forces, but Ryan didn't expect that if the surrounding people were covered with death rules, living people would be infected by the death rules as long as they saw, heard or even felt. Ryan's influence was not great. Even if he only had a preliminary understanding of the power of the rules, he was able to eliminate the influence of this little death rule on himself. But Hermione was different. Don't the wizards always say there is a of death? Where is he now? Ryan thought anxiously, because at this time he found Hermione's breath began to permeate a faint, full of feeling of silence. The expression in his eyes also began to become a bit dull. Suddenly he realized that he stood up and folded his hands and began to pray to the of death in his heart. Sure enough, the grey mist condensed in front of him soon. First hair, then head, then neck, shoulders all the way down. The surrounding mist submerged into the human figure formed by the mist in front of each other, as if human flesh and bones constituted the human body. Finally, the mist in the hole completely disappeared, and a man stood in front of Ryan and Hermione. This is a very beautiful girl, looks like an Eurasian, but a closer look can also see that this is Ryan after beauty. This should not be the true look of death. Ryan just thought of it here, and the girl across the mouth spoke. An indescribable deep voice echoed in the palace. This body was just created to facilitate communication with you. I know that intelligent creatures often like to communicate with the opposite sex, so I created this image as a communicator. Are you the of death? Ryan asked hesitantly. He hadn't known that there were gods in Harry Potter's world. No, I'm just the of death imagined in your mind, just like everything around you. But in this place, fantasy and reality can be transformed into each other. The opposite said. Only then did Ryan discover that everything around him was frozen. It's as if it was embedded in a huge piece of amber. After asking a few questions, Ryan found that the of death in front of him was not a kind of self-personal spirit, but only a set system, which only responded to certain questions. This shows that there is no personalized spirit in this world, and the so-called of death is just a substitute for the realization of these death rules. The three-piece set of Deathly Hallows is likely to be a magical prop made by a powerful wizard after mastering the rules of death. Collecting the Deathly Hallows can conquer death. It should refer to the Deathly Hallows. Get the knowledge about death rules in it. You reading www.yuukanshu.com. Lean thought straightforwardly here. I hope to leave here with my companion. What should I do? Just pay the price. The of death in front said unexpectedly. It's just that your price is much higher than that of your companion. After all, you have touched the edge of the rules, and she is just an ordinary wizard. Can you tell me what the costs are? Ryan asked. Your companion only needs to be equivalent to a thing of life, and you need something that can contain the rules of life. The opposite death said with a blank expression. And these things cannot come from other worlds. Just after this sentence, the death in front of him suddenly froze for a while, and then said to Ryan, you only need one thing that can contain the rules of life. Because your companion chooses to use a life force as a bargain entrusted to you, now in my eyes you can be regarded as one. Speaking of this, the of death again said, given that your companion has more than what she prayed for, I will provide you with all the items you need, except for life itself. After speaking, death nodded and disappeared, and everything around returned to flow again. Only one balance was left in place. One end of the sky was raised high, and the other end was a small grey translucent ball. Ryan can see the ghost image of herself and Hermione through the ball. It seems that the meaning of death means that as long as the two sides balance themselves, they can go out. Chapter 444. Metamorphosis. Ryan, are you okay? I saw death just now. When everything returned to its original state, Hermione rushed over and looked at Ryan nervously. In her narrative, Grim Reaper is a man with a hood and an invisible face. After her sudden appearance, she was told how to leave under her inquiry. Oh, you fool. Why didn't you just leave? Ryan said angrily as she looked at the disappearing piece of the meteorite amulet on Hermione's neck that could resist a death spell. At least two people can go out and one is better than the two of us are stuck here now. As soon as she said this, Hermione hugged Ryan at once, and blocked Ryan's mouth with her mouth for several minutes, until they both turned red. I said, in the face of danger, I never want you to be alone. Hermione shook her hair cheekily and said, and thanks to Grim Reaper, you don't want to throw me away now. Lane could clearly feel that the girl in front of her had already connected her soul with his soul. Most importantly, this effort is unilateral, demonstrating Hermione's extreme trust in Ryan. The system also told Ryan at this time that after Hermione entrusted her soul to him, she became similar to a part of Ryan's soul for the system, that is, it was similar to Rose Crystal. In the future, you didn't need an additional offset point to travel to other worlds. Thank you. Ryan had 1,000 words in his mind at this time, but in the end it only turned into a pale and weak word. After sorting out his thoughts, Ryan began the process of making items containing rules of life. As promised by the of death, all the tools he needs will appear around him as long as he thinks about it, and the power of death that surrounds the entire space is the best raw material for him. With the support of the indestructible fire, the two people could not eat, drink or sleep, so they spend all their time and energy on the cultivation of Our Lady of Roses. I have to admit that Hermione's wisdom helped Ryan a lot in the experiment. With her help, Ryan felt that his research was 1/3 faster than that of independent research. In the free time of refining Our Lady of Roses, Ryan worked hard to help Hermione solve the impact of death rules on her body. Fortunately, after the two souls are part of each other, Ryan can guide the energy in Hermione just like the energy in his own body. With the help of Ryan, Hermione mastered part of the ability to control the power of life and death, which freed her from the danger of death. But in this way, the power of life and death will permanently leave a mark on Hermione's body. Fortunately, anyway, the crisis of her direct living being a lich was resolved. The complexity of the production of Our Lady of Roses has far exceeded the refining of ordinary alchemy items. It can even be said that the production of items at this level is that the producers manifest their understanding of the rules into a certain substance. For Ryan, if he can make such a thing, then it can prove that his understanding and mastery of the rules reach the same level as Dumbledore, Voldemort, Nicole May or Grindelwald. This is not an easy task, even if Ryan has an advantage that all wizards in the world do not have. An alchemist who has mastered the rules can help, and does not need to try a little bit of trial and error. But even if it is so, Knowing what to do is one thing, but doing it is another. In the next long time, Ryan and Hermione are constantly making, failing, making again, and continuing to spend in failure. The excessive consumption of spirit makes the two of them show obvious weakness, but if they can see the soul, they will find that their soul flames are burning and growing, and they are more and more condensed. Especially the fire of Ryan's soul is transforming into an unprecedented state. Finally, after repeated trials and failures, Ryan felt as if he had broken through an unprecedented barrier, just like a chick hatched out of an eggshell, and it was like the first golden sunlight tearing the darkness in the early morning hours. "I know," Ryan said to Hermione, who was also wearing the same color but only mechanically cooperating with her. Hermione heard that she had recovered and gave Ryan a smile of encouragement, then waved his arm again. Countless blood-red runes once again flowed like water from Ryan's hands, and various precious materials also emerged from the void. This time is different from any previous one. There was no mistake in the middle, and the energy in the hand was exploded into fireworks, nor was it because of the subsequent lack of energy that the energy could not be further condensed and gradually dissipated. This time all the runes and those precious materials finally condensed together to form an extremely tiny point, and then the surrounding breath of death rushed to this point like tide. The influx of death breath brought everything around, and the wind appeared for the first time in this deadly environment, or something similar to the wind. The breath of death passed by the two men, and they hunted with their clothes. Part of the power of death was repeatedly condensed, forming some black heavy liquid with part of the material. The other part of the power of death is transformed into a concentrated power of life, and the remaining materials are fused into an extremely fine golden powder. The exchange of life and death, this is the power to be able to master the rules of change. Lane looked at the scene before muttering to himself, "This is the fifth element in the legend, Our Lady of Roses, or Alchemist's Stone. That is the entire big A reflection of the universe." At this time, the surrounding death forces are continuously transformed into two substances, and at the same time, the two converted substances begin to rotate and merge together quickly. Ryan can feel that the things in front of him are constantly changing, and all kinds of transformations within it happen all the time. But at the same time, it gradually became static and began to have its own solid structure. A force of life and creativity slowly grew from it. The ancient European philosophers divided all things in the world into four parts: dry, wet, cold and hot according to nature, and now the production of Our Lady of Roses is to synthesize all of them. In the legends circulating in the world, mercury and sulfur are the two major elements of the magic stone. But in fact, this is just a cryptic word. Mercury represents wet and cold material in the world, and sulfur represents dry and hot material in the world. Their combination symbolizes that all things in the world are integrated into a microcosm and a mirror image of the whole world. When these energies were compressed beyond a certain limit, the first drop of red liquid appeared in front of them. After that, a drop of the same liquid kept pouring out, and the first drop of liquid as the core slowly aggregated together and solidified a little at the same time. Eventually, a large slab-like translucent red stone appeared in midair, and it showed a breath of life incompatible with the surrounding environment. Ryan reached out and caught it. www.mplnovel.com. Unfortunately, in this in an incomplete environment, the Virgin Mary is just a secondary version of the Virgin Rose. What a pity, those precious materials. Ryan shook her head regretfully after sensing something in her hand. But it's enough to leave here by this thing. Is this a success? Hermione asked, looking at the stone in Ryan's hand. Her eyes seemed to be attracted to the stone. It's no wonder that after a long time in such a place full of death and grey, a brightly colored thing with a breath of life will naturally attract people's attention. Yes, Ryan opened his mouth in amazement before he finished. When he turned to look at Hermione, he found the girl beside him. It was completely different from before, no trace of blood on his face, pale and terrible. The hair also turned grey with no life. "What's the matter with you?" Ryan asked nervously, grabbing Hermione's shoulder. But when his hand touched Hermione's shoulder, he felt his heart beating abruptly, because the tentacle was not at all temperature. It's like feeling a corpse. "Oh, sorry, I just forgot." Hermione looked at Ryan's amazed eyes and put her hands together on her chin, making an apologetic gesture. "This is my new ability under your guidance. In order to adapt to the surrounding environment, I am sorry to scare you." After finishing talking, Hermione closed her eyes, and soon the whole person returned to normal, even looking healthier than before. Chapter 445, Return to the World. "Just like you found your way here, I also found my own way with your help," Hermione said like a little girl showed her most beloved toys to show Ryan his new acquired power. The power Hermione gained was related to death. In this space full of death, the rules of death that so many wizards usually pursue are not easy to see. In this case, Hermione slowly grasped these powers about death through the help of Lane, and the life-death transition just now was a simple application of this power. "Unfortunately, my magic is not strong enough. In addition to the tricks just now, other slightly useful spells can't support the launch a few times at all." After demonstrating several magics like weak rays, Hermione said a little bit depressed. "That's why I can use these magics so smoothly in this environment of death." "It's okay, we are still young, and the magic will gradually become stronger in the future. After comforting Hermione, Ryan walked to the skylight left after the death of Death, and placed the refined secondary rose Madonna on the high warp in the tray over there. There is no imaginary sound and light effect when this red translucent stone is put into the tray. The arms of the balance began to rotate quietly and slowly, and finally the end that represented Ryan Hermione's soul lifted slightly. Here, a quality is necessary for giving and gaining. At the moment when the arms of the balance were still, the voice of Death echoed in this palace. You can make your request. Lean thought about it and found that he didn't need anything, so he gave the opportunity to Hermione. Hermione only lowered her head for a moment, then raised her head and said to the air, I want to know about death. Knowledge? Of course, I will give you the right knowledge. Bleach's voice sounded again. You are not the first human to make such a request, and seeking knowledge should be a characteristic of your humanity. Not the first one? Ryan and Hermione seemed to know some terrible news. Hermione asked impatiently, can we know who was the person who sought knowledge before? They call themselves Peveril, Antioch, Cadmus and Ignitus. As soon as the words fell, a transparent ball appeared in front of Hermione. This is the knowledge for you. We are now clear. You can leave at any time. Looking at the 3 stone arches that suddenly appeared in front of him, Ryan could only marvel at the powerful power after he truly mastered the rules. At this time Hermione also absorbed the knowledge and walked behind him. How about this knowledge? Ryan looked away from these doors and asked. It feels very good. Hermione also stared at the 3 magical doors. With these things, I believe I will reach your heights someday. I am looking forward to that day. Ryan also seemed very happy with Hermione's harvest. As a human being who is still an ordinary person in his heart, he hopes that this road of detachment can be accompanied by someone. Which door should we go out from? Hermione looked at the doors in front and felt a little confused. The one on the left. Lane said, this is the first line of life left to the living in the world of death. If the living can survive in this place and pay the price in accordance with the exchange rules, then he can return to the world through this door. That's right. No wonder I can feel the breath of life from it. But isn't there a door on the far right that can feel the breath of life? What does this door do? Hermione stared curiously at the door on the far right. That's the way the deceased returned. The ghosts did not have the courage to move forward here, and they returned from this door. There is no cost to go back from here. But only the ghosts can leave from here and leave them at the same time. You can never return afterwards. You can feel that this door is not enough to support our body to return to the world. The door in the middle is the way to go. We see that the death left by some great wizards is just the beginning of a great journey. The starting point is here. Once you choose this way, you really cannot look back. The stone arches that lead to various places are really incredible. Why there are traces of human architecture here? Hermione asked a question after carefully observing the 3 arches. No, it's just that we think that leaving this place should be such a stone arch. Lane said to Hermione seriously, the boundary between the virtual and the real in this place is not so strict. Our power can affect the surrounding environment. Let it be what we have in mind. Okay. Ryan looked at Hermione, who was trying to study the 3 doors, and took her hand directly. These things are actually of little research value to us now, and now we have to go back quickly. Hermione woke up and heard her. She nodded and walked side by side with Ryan into the middle door. They felt that there was only endless darkness inside. But after taking a step, the surrounding environment immediately changed. They appeared in an alley, and the sound of people talking and the sound of the car's engine on the streets in the distance. Ryan, we are really back. Hermione cried and laughed while holding Ryan. Whether it was gasoline or the smell of dust, they really returned to the world unharmed. Ryan understood Hermione's excitement, staying in that death-filled place for so long, once again feeling the vitality of the human breath, and once again feeling that she was still alive enough to make anyone cry. We now need to know where this is, and when it is now www.mplnovel.com. Wait for himself and Hermione to calm down a little later, Ryan said. Yeah. Hermione's eyes widened. I think we have spent a long time behind that door, and they must not have done our funeral. After 2 people put on the mole clothes prepared in advance in the space bag, they walked to the street. When passing a newspaper kiosk, they saw the date of the newspaper of the day. It's incredible, Hermione said excitedly when there was no one beside him. I feel like we have been there for a whole year, but actually only spent 3 days. Yeah, this is a good thing. Ryan smiled. We can surprise our friends. Hope not to become a shock. Hermione shrugged. Of course. Of course. Ryan spread his hands. We just need to tell them that we are lucky enough to leave from there. There is no need to say anything. Anyway, there is the Department of Mystery Affairs. Any magical thing can happen. Very well, let's hurry back to the castle now. At this time, the 2 had reached a small road, and Hermione reached out her wand and began to summon the night bus. With a bang, a purple bus appeared in front of them. Welcome to ride a night bus. This is an emergency passenger transport for a witch or wizard in trouble. Just reach out your wand and get in the car. We can take you wherever you want to go. Mine the name is Stansan Parker, and now I'm your ticket seller. Chapter 446, Fierce battle. When Harry was sober, he found that he was now in an office of the Ministry of Magic. The upper half of the door of this house seemed to be smashed by magic. Only the lower half was connected to the door frame by a copper hinge, which was brought by those magic spells the rising wind swayed with the stones stirred from the wall. It was obvious that Harry had not been in a coma for a long time. Death Eaters and members of the Order of the Phoenix are still fighting outside. Harry glanced over his head and found out that the members of the Order of the Phoenix had protected him. They blocked the only exit in the corridor outside to stop the crazy Death Eaters who wanted to rush in. As the defense of the Phoenix shattered, cheers came from the Death Eaters. At the same time, Harry felt a sharp pain in his forehead. "It's Voldemort, he's here." After saying this, Moody knocked open the door and rushed in. Then he threw Harry into the elevator. The elevator was already waiting here, and the fence was open. Moody yelled at Harry with a fist bump on the button labeled Main Hall. "We can't stop him for too long, you must leave here quickly." When was finished, Moody turned around and continued to fight. The door closed, and Harry rose gradually. Looking at the hallway in the melee, he squeezed the prophecy ball in his hand, knowing that only by taking this thing out can he live up to everyone's struggle. "Do you think you can really escape?" Before the fence door was fully opened, Harry squeezed out. But when he first ran to the fountain of the Brothers of Magic, a voice hissed like a snake. Looking around, Harry saw a thin, snake-like scary face behind him. The face was pale and haggard, and his pupils were staring at him like a slit of scarlet eyes. Voldemort appeared in the middle of the hall, his wand pointed at Harry, and Harry stood there violently and stiffly, unable to move. Even the scars on the top of the head produce intense waves of pain like tide at this time. "Hand over the prophecy ball, and I can bless you with painless death," Voldemort said softly, staring at Harry with his scarlet, cold eyes. "Come on, your resistance is meaningless. You don't want to get it." When the pain on the forehead reached a peak, Harry felt his body regain control. He manipulated his right arm as heavy as a lead block and slammed the prophecy ball down. Obviously Voldemort was too confident, so he didn't react until Harry dropped the prophecy ball on the ground. The prophecy ball shattered on the smooth marble floor in the hall, and a pearly figure with huge eyes rose into the air. Harry could see its mouth fit together, but he and Voldemort heard nothing. The sound of the water flowing in the fountain obscures the small sound in the prophecy ball. "I have nothing to tell you, Potter." Voldemort watched this scene and suddenly calmed down. "Since you have been asking for a long time, you have always troubled me, Avada." Harry wanted to avoid it, but his heavy body couldn't support him to complete this activity. When he saw green light running straight in front of him, he felt his brain was blank. Just when he thought he was going to die, the golden wizard statue in the fountain was alive. He jumped from the base and slammed on the floor between Harry and Voldemort, spreading his arms to protect Harry. The spell had just passed by his chest. "Dumbledore, how are you?" Voldemort gasped, when the elevator fence opened again, and Bella climbed out. Master, Dumbledore is here, and many of the people below have been caught by him." At this point she saw Dumbledore standing in front of the Golden Gate, and immediately shut her mouth. Voldemort immediately waved his wand and a green light approached Dumbledore. Dumbledore turned around and flicked out with flexibility not suitable to his age. He only took a step forward and appeared behind Voldemort. Then he waved his wand and directed the statues in the fountain to move. A statue of a wizard successfully pressed Bellatrix, whose legs were broken, against the floor, and even if she repeatedly attacked, nothing worked. The other centaur statue pushed Harry back and covered him with his body. At the same time, the other statues rushed to Voldemort standing there. "You are old, Dumbledore is no longer my opponent." Voldemort flashed to the other side of the hall just like Dumbledore just now. Afterwards a fatal spell was cast on Dumbledore, but still did not hit the target. It just burned a decorative banner hanging from the roof into a flame. "But you need to know that the Eras have been mobilized and there are those hitters. They are already on their way." Dumbledore still said in that calm tone. "You are not a good choice to come here today. How can many more people treat me?" A silver shield turned out to block Dumbledore's powerful spells, and then he changed the firewire that Dumbledore had wrapped around him into after the Viper. Dumbledore reversed his attack. Dumbledore waved his wand sharply, and the snake was thrown high into the air and disappeared into a thick smoke. At the same time, the Phoenix Fox suddenly appeared to block the sneak attack of Voldemort, who was teleporting to the fountain behind Dumbledore. It burned into a flame and fell to the floor. Then a fledgling flew from the floor head out of the ashes. At the same time, all the water in the fountain flew together, and like Volkswagen wrapped in the water like amber wrapped in small bugs. Afterwards, the water polo flew in midair under the struggle of Voldemort, and Dumbledore stretched out his arms with a serious face as if embracing, using magic to maintain the water polo. In the continuously rotating water polo, a black, rippling, vaguely looking Voldemort figure shimmered, and he could see that he was struggling to struggle out of this suffocating environment. Finally, the raised water crashed back into the pool, and a lot of water poured out of the pool, which wet the smooth floor. Voldemort broke free, and he was about to escape. "Master!" Bellatrix shouted sharply. Dumbledore's back, Harry felt his scars exploded. An unprecedented pain swept through his mind. www.mplnovel.com. He felt that there was a monster in his body suddenly occupying his body, while using his mouth to make a hissing sound like a snake. "Kill me now, Dumbledore." Just when Harry was confused, the pain suddenly disappeared, and many voices echoed in the hall. After picking up his glasses from his side and putting them on, he found that the main hall was full of people. The row of fireplaces against the wall in the hall fired together, and then a large number of wizards came out from inside. Several wizards shouted at the fragment of the wizard statue that had just pressed Bellatrix, "We saw it, Mr. Fudge. I swear that he is a mysterious man, and he is holding a woman in a phantom." At this time, Fudge also squeezed in from behind. He gasped quickly, and he could still see the pajamas in his robe. "Gosh, here, in the Ministry of Magic. God is on. It's incredible. I mean, how could it be? But the truth is here, Fudge, you have been running on the wrong route for 12 months. I think I have a lot to tell you. But now I need to send Harry back first." Speaking of this, Dumbledore walked to a fireplace and lit the fire, then said to Harry, "Now this fireplace is connected to my office, you just need to call Hogwarts. We will be half an hour later." See. Harry walked into the fireplace and shouted Hogwarts, and his eyes began to turn upside down. He left from the Ministry of Magic. Chapter 447, Responsibilities and Burdens. Harry finally rushed out of the mouth of the fireplace. His feet stepped on the carpet. He looked around and found himself in the principal's office that had been vacant since Professor Dumbledore left. Everything around is the same as the day when Dumbledore left. Beautiful silverware was placed on the table. Occasionally, some white mist erupted. The portraits of the old school principals and boys are quietly napping on the canvas. Harry looked out of the window, and an elegant greyish-green hung on the horizon. Dawn was coming slowly. Is quiet in the office. Only the occasional snoring or sniffing of a portrait in sleep will break the tranquility here. Harry had no way to endure such an environment. He was now very worried about the friends who followed him into the Ministry of Magic, as well as those members of the Phoenix who came to the rescue later. They were completely dispersed in the previous battle, and now Harry can only silently pray that they are all right. Just as he silently stood by the windowsill and looked out of the window, an emerald green flame suddenly burst into the empty fireplace. When Dumbledore's tall figure emerged from the flames, the wizards of men and women on the surrounding walls suddenly awakened, and many of them burst into warm cheers. Thank you all," Dumbledore said as he took out his pocket-like fox from his pocket and gently placed it on a fine grey plate under a gold-plated perch where Fox normally stays. "Oh, Harry," Dumbledore finally walked away from the little phoenix and said to Harry, "There is one thing to be thankful to tell you. Most people yesterday because you entered the Ministry survival in an environment of absolute disadvantage. This is a miracle." "Most of them?" Harry groaned when he heard the word, and he asked with a trembling voice, "Everyone, how are you doing?" "Mrs. Pomfrey is treating them," Dumbledore said. "You young people can be better." Nymphadora Tunks and Sirius Black may need to spend more time at San Mungo Hospital, but it seems they will also recover quickly. That Sirius was hit by a Death Eater with black magic in 1 enemy and 5, and lost his left hand, but I believe that will not affect his life. You just said that most people survived. So who died? Harry said this hardly. He felt like he was speaking through his mouth when he spoke. The whole person as if floating in the clouds. Ryan and Hermione. Dumbledore's tone dropped. Although no one saw their death, I went to the house and explored the arch just after I talked to Fudge. I can confirm that both of them crossed the gate. That door. Harry closed his eyes. He remembered what Ryan said when he entered the house. Crossed the curtain, and people will completely disappear from our world. No one can come back alive from behind that door. They just gone. Harry said with a trembling tone, and then seemed to answer questions again. Because of me, they are gone. I know what you are feeling now, Harry, Dumbledore said in a very soft voice. It is a very uncomfortable thing to let family and friends die because of their own factors. I have encountered this kind of thing many times in my life. No, it's different. Harry sat there, 10 fingers deeply inserted into his hair. You used to be only because of your mistakes, and this time I was equivalent to sending my friend to death. I am now thinking that if I didn't listen to you at the time and didn't save alone, maybe Ryan wouldn't died. Harry felt his body was weak. He said hoarsely. Ryan had actually opposed my adventures before, but later I decided to save people. He chose to go with us because he was worried that we would not be able to face some of the Ministry's complicated magic, and Hermione was also followed with the same thoughts. They could not have gone. I'm sorry for them. They are really good at understanding magic, and it is not unreasonable to worry. Dumbledore nodded. I checked the arch, and after synthesizing other people's accounts, I can be sure that the 2 of them had resisted the explosion of death in front of the door. If they didn't do that, the people on the table at that time basically it is impossible to survive. They saved everyone except themselves. At this point Dumbledore paused. There is nothing wrong with the 2 of you, and you alone cannot resist the power of death. I just didn't expect that Ryan went so far in the study of magic, but I think they should know what they are facing when they save you, but they still do it. They are brave at this point. More brave than most adult wizards. So, this is my fault, Harry murmured with his head down. But Dumbledore interrupted his self-satisfaction. "This is not just your problem, but also my mistake." Harry looked up at Dumbledore in surprise, and then saw Dumbledore's eyes also apologized. "I have been a principal for too long. This long experience made me prefer to look at the problem comprehensively rather than from a person's perspective. After Sirius was kidnapped at that time, I just wanted to find the best solution. Rescue Sirius. At the same time minimize the harm of innocent people. But I did not consider that he is your only loved one now, and ignore your inner feelings. Harry, I have to apologize to you at this point. I also have to apologize to Ryan and Hermione." Dumbledore said word for word, "This is a review of an old man's mistakes, and I realized that the long life gave me not only experience, but also some stubborn wrong ideas. As the world's first white wizard, this honor and responsibility sometimes make me ignore the feelings of many people. I realize this is a big mistake, especially wrong. I should not forget how ordinary people feel. The sun has risen, the mountains show a dazzling orange light, and the sky above is colorless and bright." The light hit Dumbledore, and fell on his gray eyebrows, beard, and deep wrinkles. Harry also realized at this time that Dumbledore was indeed old, and those heavy burdens might not have enough energy to get everything they wanted. "Yes, what is the prophecy ball that Voldemort and we are fighting for today?" After a little silence in the office, Harry asked him another question. He wants to know what exactly his friends exchanged for their lives. "This is a long story, Harry. I want to present it to you in a more intuitive way." After that, Dumbledore stood up and walked past Harry, to a black beside the phoenix perch in front of the cabinet. He bent down, removed the latch and take out the meditation basin from inside, then raise his wand and point it to the temple. www.mplnovel.com. Pull out a few strands of silvery, spiderweb thin thought fibers stuck to the wand and put them into the stone basin. Harry and Dumbledore buried their heads in the meditation basin together, and did not raise their heads until 1/4 of an hour. He looked at Dumbledore and asked, "This is what you have been hiding from me?" All things are caused by such a prophecy. As a wizard who grew up in the Mole world, Harry hadn't been very kind to this prediction. This is especially true after attending Hogwarts divination classes. In this case, when he learned that all his life was due to this prophecy, he naturally felt a sense of absurdity. Yes, even if Voldemort only listened to the first half of the prophecy. The boy's birthday was in July. His parents defeated Voldemort 3 times. "But he still came to the door to try to kill you. But he failed under the protection of your mother. But he had also marked you, marking you as his life's enemy," Dumbledore said slowly. "The end of the prophecy. It means 2 people can't both live." Harry's heart seemed to sink. "We must kill one another. Yes, this is the burden that you will shoulder, which is heavier than anyone I have seen. On this road, you will see many sacrifices. Family members, friends, even your own. Unfortunately, yes, Ryan and Hermione are probably just the beginning, and all you can do now is to minimize the occurrence of such tragedies." After listening to Professor Dumbledore, Harry stood there in silence for a long, long time. Chapter 448, Variety. 3 days ago, a huge riot occurred in the Ministry of Magic, and the person who could not even mention the name returned. In a short statement on Friday night, Minister of Magic Cornely Foggy confirmed that the person who could not even mention the name returned to the country and started the activity again. Although the Ministry of Magic has been vigorously denying Dumbledore's stern warning once, but the person who can't even mention the name led a group of followers, known as the Death Eaters, into the Ministry of Magic on Tuesday night. Fudge has been trying to cover up the truth. The Ministry of Magic calls on the public to be vigilant. The Ministry of Magic is publishing a preliminary defense guide for families and individuals, and will distribute it to all wizard families for free within the next month. Professor Dumbledore, who has resumed all his duties, has not received any interviews due to his busy schedule. But as we all know, the boy who was in trouble is the first to debunk this truth. Read it here. Ginny looked at Harry sitting on her bedside and said, "Look. The newspapers are all praising you, believing that you have a keen sense of touch and noble qualities to debunk the conspiracy of the mysterious person." Most of the little wizards who followed Harry to the Ministry of Magic that day were here. Mrs. Pomfrey, the wound on Ginny's body, healed them with a wand. So for the past 2 days, she and Harry insisted on coming here every day to visit her brothers. Ron, George and Fred all left traces of curses, especially George, who was fighting side by side with Sirius against 5 fierce Death Eaters. Even if Sirius desperately covered George at the time, George was injured. It is not light. Now he needs to drink several potions every day. Fortunately, these injuries are treatable, and his injuries are visible to the naked eye these 2 days. But even so, George still can't stand up and move around the bed like others. He can only sit obliquely against the mattress at the head of the bed. If it wasn't for Sirius to block most of the curse at that time, his condition might be worse than it is now. But even so, George's current situation is not easy. In Madame Pomfrey's words, enough for him. Sensitive, tactile, noble quality. Before pretending to be deaf and dumb, there is nothing to do. Everything is safe. They are also. Harry did not angrily comment on the praise of him in the Prophet Daily. After this year, after grinding many things, he grew a lot. "Oh, what's the latest thing in school?" George lay there and asked, as the most fun-loving person, Now he must lie quietly here as a kind of torment for him. So every time you visit them here in these 2 days, he will ask what is happening outside. Umbridge got out of school. But now it seems that the Ministry of Magic still wants to keep her. I really don't know how she can do so many evil things and go back to the Ministry. Ginny was a little angry. To say, the Ministry of Magic will always need some dirty people. This is what my father told me before, Fred said by the bed. It's really disgusting. Ginny frowned, and she really didn't like these dark things. Don't say this. Harry changed the subject. Now Dumbledore is back and most of the troubles in the school have been resolved. At least I think everything is back to normal. That's good. Fred smiled and opened a chocolate frog from the candy at the head of the bed. He half-handed it and handed it to Harry. Try some chocolate. We still have a lot here. Harry took the chocolate and chewed slowly. When Ron asked, who is the current divination teacher? Or is it Firenze? Yes, after all, this is part of Professor Dumbledore's plan to contact other intelligent creatures, and Flun can't leave yet. Ginny looked a little happy, and the handsome Professor Marin gave the feeling that Professor Bitely Launier relied on Scoresum. But they won't interfere with each other upstairs or downstairs. The two should teach this class together. I want to say that there is not much difference between the two. Ron took a bite of licorice wand and said, it is impossible to predict that this kind of thing will be very reliable in most cases. After this year's test, I can finally get rid of this class. Harry thought of his prophecy at this time. He interrupted Ron's vomiting in the prophecy class, but sometimes the prophecy is still very important. For example, this time Voldemort regarded the prophecy as an important weapon. Fortunately, we did not let him steal the prophecy. Yeah, we stopped the mysterious man's conspiracy again. Just don't know what happened to those friends who are now in Street Munker ? Where are you going? Ron saw Harry standing while he agreed. Stand up. Well, I suddenly thought I might need something to do. Harry stood up in a panic. I will see you again this afternoon. After talking about Harry, he walked out of the school hospital, and Ron frowned as he watched Harry leave in a hurry. Ginny, what is going on? In the past 2 days, he left without saying anything. I don't know too. Ginny shook her head. But I found that every time I talked about San Mungo, Harry always tried to avoid it. I was worried. Harry hurriedly walked in the corridor of the school. He felt that he was incompatible with the joyful crowd on the playground. Regarding Ryan and Hermione, Dumbledore had written to notify their families, but it was not made public, and Harry was reluctant to tell this matter to others. He felt that if he said it, it would completely end this matter and could not be recovered. So in the past 2 days, Harry has always pretended that Ryan and Hermione were only seriously injured in Street Mungo in front of his friends. Although he knew that this was just an illusion, he would rather drag this matter to the last minute. Novel.com. In this case, he is naturally in a bad mood. Looking at the sunlight outside, Harry decided to go alone by the lake to spend some time in the sun. When he had just walked down the last marble staircase and entered the porch, Malfoy, Crabbe, and Gower were coming out of the door leading to the Slytherin public restroom from the right. Malfoy glanced at Harry, unexpectedly without provocation, and walked out the door hurriedly with 2 followers without even saying a word. Harry knew that this was because Crabbe and Gore's father had previously disappeared inexplicably in the Battle of the Department of Mystery, plus Malfoy's father was detained in Azkaban. Now the 3 of them have no spirit to do anything else. The shouts, laughter, and splashing water from the open front door. Harry stood in the front hall looking at the joyous atmosphere outside, a bit dazed. He thought it would be nice if everyone could enjoy the leisure time after the exam at this time. In his impression, it seems that the days of being busy for the exam and hoping to finish the exam quickly have been a long, long time ago, and the long ones are like what happened in another world. If Ryan and Hermione were still there, they would definitely run to the lake and try their best to answer the test questions. Just thinking that, Harry saw 2 familiar figures walking into the hall from the outside holding hands. You, Harry stammered after rubbing his eyes to make sure it was not an illusion. Long time no see, Harry. A familiar voice rang in Harry's ear. Chapter 449, Castle Convergence. The Knight and Hermione, who hurried back to Hogwarts from London on a Knight's bus, were the first people they met when they entered Hogwarts Castle. What's the matter with him? Ryan stared at Harry's face after he saw Harry stutter and spit out a few words, feeling a little hairy in his heart, especially when Harry looked at it and felt that his tears were almost coming down. Think about some of the habits of the British, and then think about a certain part of your life. He felt that this strange situation now made him feel a little cold behind him, and he didn't know what he should do. Finally, he could only stare there with Harry. Harry, Ryan, wake up. Hermione saw the 2 men staring at each other and quickly reached into the middle of them, snapping fingers, and Ryan and Harry only woke up at the same time. You are still alive. This is really great. Harry flew over and hugged them. I thought I didn't expect you to really come back, which is really great. It's okay, Ryan said, hitting Harry's shoulder. Aren't we coming back? Well, after a while, Harry calmed his emotions. They appeared in the principal's office 7 or 8 minutes later, and Dumbledore stood up directly after looking at Ryan and Hermione, who followed Harry. Lane could see the surprise in the sky-blue eyes under Dumbledore's glasses. You really exceeded my expectations. When they sat down, Dumbledore waved his wand, and an instant tea and a plate of snacks appeared in front of each of them. "Do you mind if you talk about what you have met these days?" "Naturally don't mind." Ryan took a sip of hot tea and spent almost a year in a world where there was nothing but death. At this time, drinking a cup of hot tea was very exciting. After putting down the teacup, Ryan began to talk about her and Hermione's experience behind that stone arch. In addition to concealing the use of life magic and the source of certain knowledge, he carefully stated his experience. "This is a miracle." After more than an hour passed, Ryan told the experience behind the door completely, and Dumbledore made a marvel. When he was young, his sister died unexpectedly. Dumbledore studied a lot of knowledge about death, which naturally included the world of death behind the arch of the Ministry of Magic. "I think you are very few wizards who can come out of that place." "Yes, before us, the three brothers of Peverell entered the world and then retreated. Unfortunately, they were too far away from the time at that time, so that such a great adventure is only in the fairy tale today. There is a little bit left." Ryan also lamented the great power of time that could wipe out all traces of what had happened. "Harry, I think you should tell Ryan and their companions about their return. They must be very worried about Ryan and Hermione," Dumbledore said to Harry. "But I think where do they come back from? You'd better keep it secret. Once you tell someone about the matter coming back from that door, it's likely to cause unnecessary trouble to your friends. You just need to tell Weasley Lane that they were from mysterious affairs that night. After the disappearance of the secretary, it would be fine to appear unexpectedly on the streets of London today." "Principal Dumbledore, I understand." Harry finished and left the principal's room from the spiral staircase. He knew that the principal should have something special to tell Ryan at this time. It would be better for him to avoid it. "Ryan, does that piece of Voldemort's soul on Harry's forehead have a solution now?" After watching Harry leave, Dumbledore asked Ryan very seriously. "The problem now is to make sure Harry is fine." Ryan also frowned. "Hermione and I both got some gains in this accident, especially Hermione's gains mainly focused on the soul and life and death. The problem now is that the mysterious man's soul film is not a complete soul. Even if I and Hermione with full cooperation, the chance of not harming Harry is at most half. You obviously can come out from that place," Principal Denbujuo said with some doubt. "Can you solve a little soul by reversing life and death?" Harry's situation is very special. Ryan looked at Dumbledore asking this question and knew that even when the principal was young, he hadn't done much research in this area. But there is still a certain deviation in the understanding of certain things without actual operation, so he explained carefully. The Horcrux was originally placed on an item after its own soul was split. Harry is the first living Horcrux ever. This means that Harry, as a Horcrux container, still has his own soul. So too there must be some interweaving of this soul. I think Harry's serpentish accent was acquired because of this situation. Watching Dumbledore nod his head in agreement, Ryan went on to say, "But this entanglement also caused a problem. That is, the fusion of the two souls in Harry's body is getting higher and higher. Especially Harry is very small. When I was in contact with Voldemort's soul film, it was basically that soul that grew up with Harry. From a higher level perspective, this soul is like the prophecy ball in the Department of Mystery Affairs that day. The same is the problem that is unique to Harry and the mysterious man. Only they can solve this problem simply, and other people will have much more difficulty and cost to intervene." "This is it." Dumbledore leaned back on the chair, looking weak. "But it's not completely hopeless." Ryan looked a bit older and said a lot of Dumbledore. "I think if I can improve my strength a little bit, maybe I can solve that problem. Now the main problem is my strength is not enough to maintain this complicated and expensive operation. Even if Hermione shares some of the pressure around me, I can't guarantee the best condition of the whole process. Naturally, this will not guarantee Harry's survival." "Ah, that's good." Dumbledore sat up and stared at Ryan. "We still have enough time to do this. You must not be too anxious about it. It is very easy to go astray in pursuit of strength and impatience. You only need to develop normally." "Yes, I know." Lane nodded seriously. www.mtlnovel.com. At this time Dumbledore stood up to signal that the conversation was over. But when he and Hermione also stood up, they were suddenly stopped by Dumbledore. "Well, because you fell into the arch before, so I notified your parents," Dumbledore said with some embarrassment. "I think now they are preparing to rush back to the UK. You didn't inform our parents about our accident?" Hermione looked at the principal nervously. "No." Principal Dumbledore shook his head. "What I thought was to apologize directly to them, so I only said that an important thing happened to you, and they need to go back to the UK to deal with it. Because of some circumstances over there, they will have to receive this letter in a hurry. It is estimated that I will wait until the end of this semester, and now it seems that this is a problem for the two of you." "It's okay, as long as the person is still there. It's nothing to trouble," Ryan said with a breath. "And I think we may have some important things that need their help." "They came just right," Hermione continued. Ryan looked at Hermione with some surprise. He began to be a little confused about what he needed from his parents. But after thinking for a few seconds, his eyes widened suddenly because he thought of something important. "That's good." Dumbledore didn't notice Ryan's expression change. He smiled. "Actually, I have been writing the eulogy about you during the final speech here before. I am very happy that the changes in things have made me busy this morning." As Ryan said, "People are just fine." Chapter 450, Ready. Ryan and Hermione left the principal's office and went directly to the school hospital to visit friends who had fought alongside them in the Ministry of Magic. The Weasley siblings were very happy when they saw Ryan and Hermione appearing unharmed in front of them. Ryan naturally told them that they had only triggered a certain kind of magic in the Department of Mystery in the past 2 days. On the streets of London 3 days later, everyone accepts this explanation. Ron told them that it was not only him and Hermione who were missing in the battle between the two mystery departments. The Death Eaters were even more miserable, with 5 people directly missing. In addition to the fathers of Crabbe and Goyle, there is Selvin, an unknown Albanian black wizard and a werewolf. Ryan nodded slightly, and after coming out from behind the arch, he contacted the rose crystal that he had withdrawn before according to his order. Now Ron told his missing person and rose crystal that the body they took away could be perfectly matched. Among these corpses, the werewolf's corpse was the most important to Ryan, because after having this specimen, Ryan's research on the werewolf can greatly move forward. The only bad thing is that the old woman in Umbridge can return to work in the Ministry of Magic without fail, Fred said in a bad mood. Even what she did at Hogwarts was exposed. Did she not receive any punishment? Hermione asked, puzzled. At least I think the lynching of students with black magic feather pens is illegal anyway. Isn't there a corresponding charge for using black magic to torture people in wizarding laws? Yes, George nodded. But the group of pureblood wizards of the Ministry of Magic firmly believe that Umbridge is only a little too aggressive when executing the orders of the Ministry of Magic. At the same time, they think that the damage caused by black magic is irreversible, so the feather pen cannot be considered black magic items. However, the Ministry of Magic has also made compensation, giving each punished student a compensation ranging from 10 to 80 gallons. Is this how it happened? Hermione had nothing to say about the wizards' kind of muddy treatment. What do the wizards do to make laws? Well, apart from the secrecy law and a few wizarding laws, most of the remaining legal wizards do not pay attention to themselves. Ron smiled a little ironically. Most of these laws are enacted separately by specific departments. For example, my father will make certain laws governing the enchantment of mull items. However, as far as I know, he has left several loopholes in this law for himself. Studying those mull things, and inferring it like this, I think those pureblood definitely have a lot of loopholes in the law that benefit them. I suddenly found that I had no choice to go to work in the Ministry of Magic. After hearing Ron's words, Hermione felt that she had made the right choice during career counseling. The wizards did need to change from the most basic place. If you go directly to the Ministry of Magic, at most, you can change some corners with the help of the wizarding families that support it. It is impossible to realize your dream of changing the magic world. Yeah, it can only be changed a little bit from the most basic place. Lane agreed. Of course, although Umbridge is very cunning, there are not many influential children of the pureblood wizard family among her victims. But the total defeat of the Ministry of Magic also made her miscalculated. Probably to appease the victim may also show her determination. The Ministry of Magic transferred Umbridge to Northern Europe, and now she has been appointed as the Nordic non-human biology liaison officer. And if there are no major problems, she should have been today. It's over there, George said with raised eyebrows. It doesn't sound too heavy, Ryan asked with a frown. No, Fred said with a smile. This department was established when Umbridge left Hogwarts that day, and she was the only one, and there was nothing but the establishment. This is equivalent to exile her. Just find a good reputation to maintain the Ministry of Magic. It has just a face. After all, she offended the first white wizard. No one in the Ministry of Magic would conflict with this wizard who lacked background and disliked most people. It's too realistic. The most basic rule in the magic world is whoever has the big fist. The Ministry of Magic refuses to keep this loyal dog obviously because the fist is not as big as Dumbledore's. Lane thought about Hermione. After a glance, the sole connection between the two people could make Ryan vaguely feel that Hermione had the same idea. After chatting for a while, Ryan and they were kicked out by Madame Pomfrey because the school doctor believes that the wounded need more rest. In rest, a long chat can be detrimental to their recovery. When pushed out of the door, they saw Fred and George making a grimace together. In the next few days, everyone enjoyed the leisure time at the end of the semester. During this time, Hermione seemed to have something to do. Ryan naturally noticed, so he was preparing accordingly. For example, when I ran the Wanji grocery store one night, on the one hand, I handed over the golden sand from the converter to the teacher Luo Zen. On the other hand, I went to the world of the Lord of the Rings to customize something. He first went to the dark jungle to prepare a little raw material, and then ran a lonely mountain again. After listening to Ryan's request, Thor in Oakshield vowed that it was not difficult to make what Ryan wanted, so he would build it by himself, and he would pick it up a week later. Looked at the painful drink of a whole bottle of honey vodka imported from the Bans in Anduin Gorge. After excitedly calling friends to start the work immediately, Soren smiled helplessly and left. 1 week later, that is, 3 days before the end of the semester, the boys of the Weasley family were finally fully discharged. Everyone used the afternoon tea time to hold a small celebration banquet. After eating, Lane went to the world of the Lord of the Rings and retrieved a large silver box with a slap, and then held the last reading party with Hermione this semester. because all the exams have ended at this time, plus so many things have happened recently. So when everyone saw Ryan and Hermione walk in, they started talking about what happened in the ministry that day. After Hermione cleared her throat and made everyone quiet, Ryan began to tell everyone the story that happened that night. www.mplnovel.com. In addition to what happened in the Death Hall, he synthesized Harry's experience and carefully took that night what happened told everyone. The Weasley twins added a lot of details with excitement. This means, is the war really starting? Celia, a Ravenclaw student in 2nd grade this year, covered her mouth in surprise. Yes, Lane nodded. Although no one wants to see this scene, it's true. So from now on we will face real danger. Given my identity as a mole, I will definitely fight against the mysterious person. If you are out of safety, if you want to quit the book club now, I can fully understand. I won't quit. Unexpectedly, Neville, who usually seemed a little timid, came out and expressed his attitude. I was destined to fight mysterious people, and here I think I learned a lot. Neither will I. I'm not a wizard, and the mysterious person will not let me go. Our parents have fought him for a long time, and we have fought him once. We are not afraid. Everyone was talking eloquently, and no one chose to quit. After listening to everyone's answers, Ryan felt that his efforts in recent years were not in vain. The next time is practice time. In addition to reviewing the spells of this semester, Ryan sent a booklet of common magic to every member so that everyone can practice during the summer vacation. Just before the end of the time when everyone was about to leave, Ryan suddenly ran to the stage and stopped Fred and George.